Hey guys, welcome to Hallowed Groundling. And tonight we have a very special topic. You can guess what it is. My absolute favorite Stephen King novel. My absolute favorite novel. No, it's my favorite Stephen King novel, definitely by far. I've read it many, many times. And tonight I have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about the book, and we're going to be talking about the '89 movie, and we're going to be talking about the 2019 remake, as well as some other interesting Pet Sematary topics. So, my guest tonight is a friend of mine that I've known for a very long time from high school, and he is a huge horror fan, and I'm really excited to have him on. So, I'm going to let him into the room, and we can get going.
Hey,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
You're doing well. Good. I'm doing really well. I can only see your Steven's iPad. Are you gonna? I can't see you
Oh,
on
shit.
video.
I am
That's
bad
okay.
at this. How do I
No,
do that?
in the corner it should have a little like video thing. Start video in the left corner. Oh, there you are.
Yes.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
It's been a long time.
Yes, it's been a very long time. I'm so excited to have you on with me. This is
I
so
am
great.
super pumped.
Yeah, I thought you would be. I said, I really want to do one about Pet Sematary because it's my favorite Stephen King book. And I said, who better to have on with me than you? Because
I'm
you're,
honored.
yeah, I mean, well, so a little bit of background for everyone. We went to high school together. You're a year younger than I am. You graduated
Yes.
in 97, right?
97.
Awesome. And we just found over the years that we have very similar tastes in horror and in other parts of pop culture too. We both love
I
80s
don't even know
wrestling.
how that came about because in high school we had our drama love
Mm-hmm.
shared.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how horror or anything else that we loved didn't come up then like it came out in social media.
I think it's social media. I think the first time I saw you at one of the cons, you had gone to one of the cons and I said, oh
Yes.
my God, that looked so awesome. And then then we just saw each other at random conventions, and when we saw each other at the John Carpenter concert, and
Yeah.
it's just so funny. It's like parallel. We've gone very parallel. So I couldn't think of somebody better to have on with me to do this.
I am flattered and honored.
Yay. I'm glad you are. Okay, so let's just get started. So a little bit of an introduction. We're talking about Pet Cemetery tonight. So I want to ask you, when was the first time when you were introduced to Pet Sematary? Was it the movie first, or was it the book?
Oh yeah,
It was the
absolutely.
movie.
The movie.
And can you tell me about the first time you saw it?
Absolutely. Pet Sematary, I vividly remember being the movie when it came out that was the scary movie. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, there were fun, scary movies. I'm 10 years old at this time, 1989, 10 or 11 going into 11.
Mm-hmm.
But the slashers were never scary to me. I would root for them like I did for my WWF characters.
Well, Jason basically is a WWF character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was always I wonder how they're going to get this guy next, and looking for the design and kills. And of course you knew the blood and guts was fake, and it was kind of a fun type scary.
Yeah.
But
You
Pet
didn't care.
Cemetery,
You didn't care about any of them. It's like
exactly.
they never gave you background on any of them. It's just
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have your setup characters, your
Mm-hmm.
final girl, or sometimes Tommy Jarvis, and that's it.
Yep.
The only person you root for, which is not really a person, is the dog. You don't want the dog to die.
Never.
Ever.
No, animals shouldn't die.
Exactly. I remember when I was probably around 7 years old for the first time, Jaws in my top 5 films of all time. And when Pippet dies, I literally ran up to the VHS and ejected it and threw the tape across the living room. Justice for Pippet. I could not handle that. Because I also had a black lab, though. He looked like Pippet. So, yeah, couldn't handle it.
I turned into the little girl in Jurassic Park. I was like, where's the dog? Where's the dog? I was about 6 or 7 years old the first time I saw Jaws, and I was like, where's the dog? My mother's like, the dog's fine. Don't worry.
Exactly. Totally feel that.
Yeah.
100%.
So the first time you saw it was you were
Right.
10. Did you see it on
So
video or?
yes, it was the VHS. I was already obsessed with Stephen King,
Mm-hmm.
and because of Creepshow, which we all know that history. And I had always heard from all of my like friends' older brothers, like that were in high school, which is like the coolest thing in the world when you're in middle school and you have friends, brothers who are in high school. That's like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
VIP club. And no one that I knew did not say it wasn't like that's not scary. It wasn't like a blow off thing. Everyone said you have to see this movie. This is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And Pet Sematary was not the fun. I mean, obviously it's so much fun to watch, but that movie, I remember being around 10 or 11 years old, fifth, sixth grade, and that was one of the first times that a movie like seriously scared me.
Yeah.
And I think I probably had a bunch of my buddies over, like Halloween party style, or like a sleepover on a Friday night, like that kind of stuff, you know.
Yep.
And I try to tell my students that they don't have that experience. Yes, Netflix is so much easier and more convenient, but
Yeah.
I would trade Netflix in a second to physically get in my car,
Yep.
go into a store, and tangibly see all of the movies in front of me. That's where I got in love with my movie poster art, you know, looking at the back covers. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a whole different experience.
I completely agree with you 100% about that. I mean, I miss just like almost 10 years ago, we still had a Blockbuster in Providence. And I loved
Awesome.
that. We had it right. It was right next door to the grocery store near my apartment. And I would go, and there was that one, there was a liquor store too. And I would go get like a bottle of wine, get some
Right?
dinner stuff, and then go pick out a movie. And I had Netflix, but I loved the experience. And when I found out they were leaving, I was very sad. You
Oh,
know,
there's still one Blockbuster left.
I know. I follow them on Twitter. They're
Yep.
hilarious. They're absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on that. I feel that. We had another great video store here in Providence called Acme Video, which is like a
Nice.
really old school, cool, had every cool horror movie you could think of. They had a great horror movie section. And then they had like independent, they had, a Criterion section. So it was kind of artsy too.
Yep.
Great place. And they had VHS and DVD. They had just tons of stuff.
Really? They still have VHS going?
They did. They did.
That's
And
awesome.
they're gone now too, unfortunately, because nostalgia sometimes
Way
just.
of the dodo, man.
I know,
Killer.
it's awful. It's the worst. So
Awful.
I'll share with you the first time I saw it. The first time I saw it, my mom. I was raised alone with my mom. She raised me alone, and she would take me out for, like dinner and a movie. Every now and then she'd try to like take me out and do like a dinner and a movie, and she'd let me pick. So I was going to be 11 too, because I was born in
Right.
78. So
Yep.
I was like, I'm born in June, so it came out in April. So I was like, please, please, please. I did the begging, and my mom finally, she said,
I've been there.
yeah. She finally said, all right, I'll take you to see it. And she's like, but I don't want to hear it after, and I'm just like, and I'm so excited.
Of course.
And we went out for dinner, and I've been desperately trying to remember the name of the restaurant. It was on Ashley Boulevard. It was a German restaurant that was down on
Really?
Ashley Boulevard. Yep. And it was across from the Six Bristol Club. It was this little
Oh,
place.
wow.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's a bike shop. It was a bike shop after that. And then, yeah, but I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. I even asked my mom in preparation for tonight, and she's like, I don't remember the name of that place, But we went there for dinner. We went to see it at Cinema 140.
I love that place.
Me too. I miss Cinema 140 too.
Me too. Me too.
And I remember very little from that night.
Really?
The things it was packed. It was a packed audience.
Of course.
It had just come out. And I remember a few things. I remember Zelda.
Shudder.
We're going to talk about her tonight.
Oh.
But I remember, because I don't like, one thing I just still don't really care for is when people break the fourth wall in movies,
Right.
like in a creepy way. I
Right.
don't like that. Bugs me out. I don't like. I remember seeing Gremlins as a kid, and I
Yep.
was fine through most of Gremlins. I was pretty good until the very end when he said, "You never know, there might be a gremlin in your house."
Right.
Then I was done. I went home and I was like looking in every cupboard and thinking, they're here.
Right.
Yeah.
That scared the crap out of me.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I was scared of Stripe, and the end is
Of course.
terrifying. I mean, when I've watched it again as an adult, I'm like, this movie is not for children, you know?
That and Temple of Doom are the advent of PG-13.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
with good reason. I
absolutely,
mean, they're very scary. But I
absolutely.
remember Zelda, and I remember sitting in the theater, and people are like, it's because it was like college students, and they're laughing and they're having a good, it's like that typical
Of course.
group. I was terrified, and I mean terrified. And I sat there, and we left the theater. I was looking over my shoulder. I sat in the car. I cried in the car on the way home. My mom didn't say a word.
Thanks,
She just,
Mom.
yep. My mom was she's driving me home. She's just like, and then we get home, and I'm like, can I sleep with you? She's like, yes, you can sleep with me. And she turned to me and she said, you are not seeing another horror movie for a very long time. And I'm like, I don't want to see anything anymore.
Right,
And
right.
I was so scared. I'll tell you, it traumatized me. It really did. That's why it's like my favorite now, because it was such a strong memory from childhood. And I remember
Absolutely.
when the video came out, my mom rented it. Let's put it this way, I was afraid of the Paramount logo.
Right.
Just
Yes.
seeing that Paramount logo and
Yes.
hearing that music, I thought it's going to be Pet Sematary. And I mean, like, that's
100%.
how scared I was after
I
I saw
totally
it.
understand that.
Yeah. And I didn't watch it again until I was I was probably about 15 or 16. And I finally
Yeah.
jumped back in to watch it again. And it still scared me. And I still
Of
couldn't
course.
watch the Zelda scenes because
Oh
those
my
were so
God.
traumatizing to me. When she looks in the camera, that's what I was going before. When she looked in the camera, I was completely done. And then the end scene where she runs to the camera,
All
yeah,
right. I did homework and I had all my notes, like right of like talking points, and I
yeah,
literally have in my talking points Zelda running up to the camera screaming, "Never go to bed again."
mm-hmm,
Is, and you know me, I'm a proud horror hound,
yep,
like as you are,
yep,
self-proclaimed, like my whole life. I've seen it all, read it all, and
mm-hmm,
I can absolutely say to you that Zelda running up to the camera screaming "Never go to bed again" is legitimately the scariest scene in a movie I have ever seen in my life,
yeah.
ever. I
I still
still
look
can't
away.
watch it.
Same.
Yep, it's wicked bad. The goosebumps go right up, and I always, like, even now, like, I watched both of them again to, like, just get all the stuff going. And when she does that, I almost like involuntarily go like, ah, like when she's running toward
Oh,
you.
because I remember
It's
that's one of the sense memories from being a kid and seeing it in the theater. When I heard her voice,
on the big screen.
yeah, on the big
We're
screen, and I couldn't see her. The end, it's the final scene with her because she's got three scenes.
right,
The final scene with her when Rachel goes in that room, I couldn't see her, because
right.
she's in the corner, and you're like,
Corner,
and
crouched down, and
oh, and I was
brutal.
like, I mean, I have notes about her too. We're going on a tangent because it's a good tangent,
Of
but it
course,
was
of course.
like literally, I remember sitting there, and when she ran, I just like
Oh,
flew back in my seat and was like this and completely terrified.
brutal,
Completely. It's so, oh,
brutal.
yes. So that's my first experience seeing it. And then as I get older, like I said, I saw it again when I was like 16. It still scares me. I still love it. I read the book at that point too, when I was about
Right.
16.
Yep.
Now,
Like,
yeah, I've read the book now at last count 14 times.
you're amazing. It's awesome.
I used to read it every year. I'd read it around the fall, like around like end of September, beginning of October, when
Yep.
everything's changing. It
Yep.
was like my end of the summer book, basically, like into the fall. It was just perfect
Right.
for that. And I mean, it is my favorite. I think it's one of his. I mean, it's terrifying and it's awful, but I call it his Shakespearean tragedy because there's
Oh, I
nothing
could not
good.
agree. Couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
Actually, Pet Cemetery. That's a good way to put it. It's like morose.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a very, very, the entire, like you said before, from the opening credits and that music with the kid voices, la, la, all that kind of stuff. It
Hmm.
is, it is, the entire movie has a tone of dread.
Yeah.
Even the happy parts, there is some subtextual dread under them. It's
Absolutely.
never a comfortable. It's always like this foreboding, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Hmm.
agree with that more.
Yeah. like, and we're gonna get into the first movie. So we're gonna go in order and talk
Nice.
about both of them, and some other stuff too that I want to know if you know about, and I hope you do. If you don't, then hopefully
Sure.
you'll find out something new that you like.
Love it.
So I'm gonna give a little background on Pet Sematary. I always do this when I do the podcast. So
Yep.
Pet Sematary came out in 1989. It was directed by Mary Lambert. It was
Mhm.
written by Stephen King from his novel. And so a few people that were in it: Dale Midkiff played Lewis, Denise Crosby played Rachel, Fred Gwynn played Judd.
Ugh.
We'll go about all of them. We'll talk about everybody. Brad Greenquist played Victor Pascow, who was one of my favorites.
Mhm.
Miko Hughes was Gage. Blaze and Bo Burdall were Ellie, and Susan Blomart was Missy Dandridge. Um, so as you know, probably, it's the only novel that ever scared Stephen King. Like, it's his only.
Absolutely. I think
It's
he
his.
put it in a drawer. He
Yeah,
put it in a drawer for like a year or two.
he did. He did. He had to get out of his contract with Doubleday, and
Hmm.
he ended up giving it to them. They needed one more book to pay him out for his contract. He tried to give it to them, but they were like, "No, the death of a kid. We don't want to do that." And
Right.
then they took it because they wanted to pay the contract out. And
And
that's
didn't it
why.
actually originate because of a what if incident that almost happened with his own son?
Yes, it did. Yep.
Yeah.
It was actually two things happened. His daughter had a cat named Smucky.
Hmm.
Smucky is also in the Pet Cemetery.
Yep.
And Smucky got killed in the road. He was actually teaching at the University of Maine at Orano,
Yep.
and he was on a busy road, and all that's true. So Smucky's real, and that was his daughter's cat. And then Owen was running to the road,
Right.
and he grabbed Owen, and he told Mary Lambert actually that the book unfolded in his head from the moment he saw his son in peril and he ran and grabbed him. The whole book came into focus
Well, when
for
you're a
him.
literary genius, those things happen.
I know,
Dear
I know.
Tragedy, #1 bestseller, millions of dollars. You know?
Exactly. I love that when she's like, yeah, like little things he came up with that just this moment and just
Of
knew what he
course.
was going to write about. It's just like with The Shining when he walked around, the hotel and was like, I see it. I know
Yep.
what I'm going to do.
Yep.
He unfolds them all. It's beautiful. So a few cool things I found out. I love finding interesting facts out as I do research. Bruce Campbell was the original first choice for Lewis, which I was
Okay, I
like,
did not know that.
yeah, I was
Wait a
like,
minute. Wait a minute. Do you mean Bruce Campbell?
I sure do.
Okay.
The man, the
Uh,
myth, the chin himself.
that was not planned at all.
I
Just meant to
have
be.
I have the funnest little tidbit about Bruce Campbell. I met my husband when we both worked for Borders, and he used to work at the Borders at the World Trade Center before 9/11. And when 9/11
Wow.
happened, he ended up transferring here. And Bruce Campbell came and did a signing there of his book, and it was his birthday, so they bought him a cake with his picture on it, and then
Amazing.
everybody fought over his chin.
Of course. Of course.
Which he loved. So I just love that story. He said he was the nicest guy, but he's like, everybody fought over his chin. Everyone
Of
wanted to eat
course.
the chin. Well, who wouldn't? He's got a great
Exactly.
chin. But I love that little tidbit. I didn't know either that he was
That's amazing. I
originally.
did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm actually ashamed I didn't know that.
I know. I was too. I was like, I know a lot about this movie, and I had no idea about
Right.
that. It was
And
very.
Bruce Campbell. I've met the man twice or three times, and like he's a god, of course, but
Yeah.
I did not know that. Wow.
I know. It was crazy. They probably didn't have the money for him though, because they didn't have a lot of money for this movie.
Right?
It might have been that, but I think it worked out well anyway.
It did. It did.
So of course, it was filmed in Maine, which Stephen King was part of his contract. He said that he would write the screenplay and that it would be set in Maine, were his two parameters for them making the movie.
Mhm.
The Wendigo was originally in the script, which I
I do
didn't.
that. Yep.
Yeah, which they ended up. Of course, we hear. When Lewis is going through the swamp, we hear the noises, and then the loon laughing, which is like them insinuating the Wendigo.
Correct.
And I'm all right with that. I know that, but I love that myth, and I love that part of the book too. So,
Right.
I wish it was kind of still in there.
And then
but-
you have that like wicked ambiguous when Lewis is, I believe, on his way to bury Gage in the burial ground. That weird face thing jumps out of the lake,
Yes. Yeah.
and they never explain it. So if you don't read the book, you're like, "What was that?
Yeah.
Why? What
Yeah.
happened?"
Oh, I know. It's like it is a very weird thing. Like when I think of that whenever I watch something, and I'm like, if I didn't read the book, I'd have no clue what that meant. It's
Right.
like The Shining. It's like how Kubrick puts, Derwent and the guy in the hall with the dog suit.
Oh my,
I
no
mean,
one knows what that is unless
no, you read the book, you
exactly.
go, I know what the okay.
Right. I mean,
But if you didn't, yeah.
if you don't read the book, it's actually a little more disturbing and creepy because like the why is that there aspect or the unknown kind of thing.
Oh yeah, which is like basically what you do throughout the Shining is basically
Exactly.
why is that there? What
Right.
is that? Oh my God, another one of my favorites.
Of
Um,
course.
so of course, Stephen King is a big fan of the Ramones. The Ramones are a part of the book.
Of
Me too.
course.
Me too. And Hey Ho, Let's Go is what Lewis
Yep.
says in his head. And of course, they write the final song for the movie.
One of the greatest end credit songs of all time.
Exactly. Apparently, Mary, because her history was in music videos. She did Madonna's music
Yep.
videos and a lot for other Prince, and she did a couple others too. She knew the Ramones, and because Stephen King was a big fan, she hooked them up to talk, and then I guess Dee Dee wrote the song in 40 minutes.
Really?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
like Elton John in The Lion King. Can you feel love tonight? It's like 40 minutes. That's amazing.
Yeah, he wrote it in 40 minutes. Yeah.
It's awesome.
And I know. It's pretty neat.
That's great. I did not know that.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts. All right. So I have my let's talk about Zelda notes because I know you have let's talk about Zelda. We talked about her a little, but let's talk about her. So of course, Andrew Hubacek, who played Zelda. Zelda was played by a man, for those of you who don't know. I guess Mary had auditioned women, little girls, young girls, because in the book she's only 13.
Correct.
And the little girls just didn't have the look she wanted. They weren't scary. They weren't scary. She thought maybe a boy would be scarier. So I guess he was 18 at the time. He's told stories about, I even have a hard time watching him in things. Like I look at him and I go, yeah, you gave me such nightmares as a child.
Right.
Like I was so traumatized as a kid. I'm
Have you-
like, no. Have you?
No, but there was one convention in Jersey where I just missed him.
Oh, that's a shame.
I
Yeah.
know.
Well, he at one of them, I was doing my research and I had seen this before, but he was on a panel with the rest of the cast. He was there with
Nice.
Denise Crosby and everybody. And he was there and they were talking about the movie. And somebody in the audience asked, they said, would you by any chance give us a reenactment? Like, would you, say any
Like
of
a
the
Zelda
lines?
voice?
Uh-huh.
Awesome.
And so it was so funny. You have to watch it. I'll have to send you the link. But like Denise Crosby gets up and she goes and hides behind Dale Midkiff, and she's like, "Oh God," And he just sits there and he goes, "For one time only, I will do this." And everybody was like, and everybody went nuts in the audience. And I'm just sitting there like this, and he just went, "I'm coming for you, Rachel." And I went, "Oh God!" I was like, I couldn't. I'd be like, "Get away from me! Get away from me!"
Right. Right in the audience.
Oh my God, it's just so scary. And it's funny because we talk about her. She's such a universal fear for people. Like when you talk about this movie, she is completely, I don't know if you know Sean Clark, who does Horrors All Over the Ground. He's awesome.
Yeah, I met him. Awesome.
Yeah, me too. He's such a great guy, and his show is awesome. And
Great
he's
show.
Wicked smart, wicked funny. He's on. So there's a documentary that I wanted to talk about with you a little bit. Have you seen Unearthed and Untold, the Pet Sematary?
I own it.
Awesome.
Oh, yes.
Great. I'm glad you've seen it. So, Sean talks about like Zelda scared the crap out of him. And it's I find that whenever that movie comes up, she's the one that everybody focuses on.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question.
Because, I think she just traumatized everyone. So it's kind of a universe. I feel better because I know other people are as traumatized.
I did a poll once on Facebook, like, what's the scariest movie scene you've ever seen? And she had a lot of...
I answered that one. I know. I was like, without a doubt. I don't know who you put her against, but I was like, without a doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She'll win.
Yeah.
And, and it's funny because you watch him in the thing when he talked about how he, he barely got any sleep. Like he literally flew in and they put the makeup on him and it was a full, cast and his whole back. Recently, actually, a movie prop site just sold the piece of the back. Like the whole...
Really?
Yeah, it was expensive. Yeah, they had a few things. They had the leg from Timmy Baderman when he's holding the leg.
Amazing.
Yep, they had.
Everything there, I would buy. I would buy
I
it all.
know, I know. I wish I
A piece
could.
of grass. A piece of grass that Timmy Baderman knelt on. I'm buying it. You know?
I know. I was like looking at this. I'm like, oh my god, I wish I had a ton of money. This is
Oh,
just
me
so
too.
great. And they had Judd's foot, the mold of Judd's
No
foot with.
way.
Yep, that was
Oh,
sold. And
amazing.
then the back piece was one of the last pieces that was sold, and it's still in great condition. It's like it's it's a little degraded because it's 30
Right.
years, but
Right.
it looks really awesome. No, but he came in and he put all the makeup on, and then they had to make him up, and it took like a long time. So instead of taking him out of it, they just shot all his scenes like back to back to
Really?
back. Yeah, but
Didn't know that.
he was exhausted by the like he said he doesn't because when they've interviewed him a few times and he said he doesn't remember a lot of it. He said when he watches it he's like I don't remember because he was so
Was that in the
probably
documentary? I'm trying
he
to think
talked
back.
yeah he said he didn't remember a lot of it in the
Right.
documentary but
Coming
then
back to me. Yes.
yeah but then there's another where they talked about like exactly like what he had done and that he was just awake for a long time like he could doze between things but by the end he was so tired that and it makes sense when you have a low budget just to he wasn't in a lot of the movies so it's like you just got to film back to back to back and
Doesn't need to be.
no, I'm glad he's not in more, honestly. Um, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the book to movie comparison for Zelda.
Hmm.
So, when I read the book when I was like 16, I was of course dreading the Zelda scenes, but honestly, she didn't scare me as much in the book as she did.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. Because she just didn't. I like maybe because I already knew and I had it in my head, but it's just the way that she's painted in the book. You can see a young girl or a younger girl in your head, and you're like, okay. And I mean, I just when Rachel's, I believe every bit of Rachel's fear in the book. I believe every
Oh, of
second of
course.
her, but I don't know. She didn't scare me as much, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a minute. But the scene that actually terrifies me more in the book is Timmy Baderman.
Oh, yeah.
The Timmy Baderman scene is so scary in the book. And in the movie, it's scary, but it's not the scariest moment to
The
me.
scariest part of the Timmy Baderman scene in the movie, for me, it always has been, is the way it's like broad daylight. When you can scare me in broad daylight, you've done something.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way he shambles up the road towards his mother,
Oh,
beating the
yep.
like laundry or whatever, the carpet. It's just the
Yeah.
way broad daylight. Like my imagination is like wherever he just was shambling all the way to his
I
house.
know. I
I think it's a
know.
perfect little. It's great.
It is. It's absolutely wonderful. And I mean, he is scary. I'm not saying he is scary in the but in the book, the scene is just so different because
It is.
we'll get to him in a minute. But
Sure.
in that, I think that she scared me so much in the movie. And then when I read the book, I was like, it's more like sad. And especially, I think one of her scariest, obviously, is the nightmare scene where she sits up in bed, and looks in the
Oh
camera.
yes.
And in the book, they kind of brush. She says she's having nightmares about her after Gage
Right.
dies and everything. She says I'm having nightmares about her that she's going to come get me and all this stuff. But it's not acted out for you. It's not
Correct.
visualized really. So you see it in your head, but it's not really the same.
And if you
Um,
remove the horror, the Zelda scene is sad. Zelda's
oh,
concept, wicked sad. You
completely,
know.
completely sad. Yeah. And it's like, I think that, when Mary did it and she had such a specific idea for what she wanted. And she said in the newest, the 4K restoration, which is beautiful. If you don't have it, I'm sure you do though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she, when she talked about how she wanted to make it like a fever dream,
Right.
and it is. I mean, the whole movie's a fever dream. The whole
Yeah.
movie's, her visualization. I mean, she's such a music video person, and you can see all her visuals are very stark.
Yep.
Mary Lambert went to RISD, which I love.
Awesome.
Yep. And she does view things in that way, and you can tell. And she painted such beautiful pictures during the movie. It's so perfect that it was filmed in Maine,
Oh yeah.
because I mean, Maine's a character in it,
Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've been up to Maine, and it's like Maine's a different world.
It
It's
is.
the trees.
And a different language.
Absolutely, it is. I've been very northern Maine. It gets worse
Oh
as you
yeah.
get up more. You're like, I don't understand what anyone's saying here.
Right.
But yeah, it's like it's perfect that it was there because you feel that. You definitely feel the trees, the look. New England has such a distinct look. I mean, you can go other places and fake New England, but you know, you can't. It doesn't feel the same. It just doesn't feel
Totally
the
agree.
same. Yeah.
It's like amusement parks. It's either Disney World or it's not Disney World. Other great amusement parks. There's other great ones that I love,
Yep.
but it's either Disney or it's not Disney.
It's
So.
very true. You know, my husband and I went for the first time 3 years ago, and when we got engaged, and he'd never been, and
Oh wow.
yeah, and I was very. He's wicked into like music, and he's very, he likes Disney. He likes cartoons and stuff, so he likes Disney movies, and you know,
Sure.
I didn't think he'd hate it, but I thought he wouldn't love it. I was kind of like, I don't know how he's gonna feel about this. Like I knew he wouldn't hate it. You know, I
Well,
would
it's
never
tough
take.
going as an adult because you don't have that like kid magic,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
suspension of disbelief on everything.
Exactly. But I'll tell you something. By the end, he looked at me. He said, "When are we coming back?"
Oh,
Because he
win
loved, yeah,
keeper.
yeah, he loved every second of it. He's like, "This was great," you know. I said, "What's your favorite ride?" He's like, "Haunted Mansion." I'm like, "We were meant for each other." I'm like, sir. Yeah. So we've been again. We went again last year, and you
That's
know,
awesome.
it's true. It's like there's no other place like that, and there's no other place like Maine that you could film a Stephen King
Correct.
movie. So I
Correct.
agree.
But
I
I gotta
agree.
say, I absolutely love your shirt. Amazing. And
Yeah,
I
our
wore
friend
something for
Tom.
the amazing. I wore this for the occasion.
Oh, yay.
Of course.
I know. When I introduced the podcast, I had my book with me. This is when I met him, and this is the one that I had signed with my signature right there.
Amazing.
Yeah. I cried
When
like
I
a baby when I met him.
Oh, listen, when I met him, he was only doing that book. It was one of those things, like you only
Hmm.
signed that book. So
Yeah.
I was never able to have him sign my favorite, which is It. But
Yeah.
I mean, he could sign my napkin. I'd be like, oh, it's just whatever. When I met him, I absolutely like that was probably the most starstruck I've ever been, just because it was the person I was the fan of the longest.
Yeah. Oh,
Creep
yeah.
show at the age of 5 years old. That's it. My journey had begun.
Yep.
And I went up to him, and I had just come from work. So I actually had on a suit jacket, and under it I had my Stephen King Rules t-shirt from the Monster Squad, because I knew I'd be leaving right from work to go right up there.
I love it.
And I went up with my dad on a really rainy night, and it was like a 3.5 hour drive. And I said that when I finally get up to him, I said, "Mr. King, you've been my literary hero since I was able to read. And it would be an honor if I could shake your hand." And he said, "Thank you so much, man. God bless." And I was like, "Stephen King blessed me." And he started talking to me about like what I did. I told him I was a teacher, which he was also a teacher. Imagine if he was your teacher, like ridiculous.
I was thinking that when I watched the documentary again to prepare. I was like, I was so jealous of the students that got to be taught by him. I was like, I hate you. I wish.
Like think if you had like one of your old assignments that he wrote on, like fix this grammar. You're like, it's Stephen King's autograph. Seriously.
He told me to fix my grammar. He told me I can't write. I'm so happy. I know. When I met him when he wrote Bag of Bones. It was it was like actually like 3 or 4 months before he got hit by the car.
Oh wow.
It was the same year. It was like just before, and he was signing. He'd sign two things, whatever you wanted. It didn't matter what. And he was up at Bet's bookstore, which used to be in Bangor, and Stu Tinker, who runs that.
Yep.
Yep. Now runs the tour and everything like that. And this was at the big bookstore that was downtown before he moved to the little one. And then, this was way, way, way back. And I went with a friend, and we walked in. And it was really nice because my ex-husband was with me. And he was a huge fan of Terry Goodkind. Or he's a huge fan of Terry Goodkind. And he was there because he's from Maine too. So my husband got to meet him, and he was really excited. And we went in, and he was in the back of the store. And I was with my friend, and we were walking through. And we got to the front, we couldn't see him because there was like a wall there, but we could hear him. I could hear him talking, and I was like, and in my brain, I'm like, oh God, I'm like thinking, and I get an anxiety, thinking about going. I'm like, what am I going to say to him? What am I going to say to him? And my friend said to me, and the one regret I have is she said, "Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?" And I went, "I'll go first." And I wish I hadn't, because I couldn't compose myself. I think.
Right.
And it was so funny because I walked around the corner, and he was turned, and he was talking to somebody else like this. And then he went, "Hi." And I went, "Oh." I I just started crying. I just looked up and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he goes, it's okay. And he's like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm all right. I'm all right. And I had my hands were shaking like this and they were out. He took my hands
Oh,
and he's
please.
like, and I'm like, oh, you're making it worse. And he starts laughing and he's like, it's all right. I said, I'm not like this all the time, I swear. And he goes, I'm not either. Don't worry. It's okay. And I'm, I was totally like, I didn't say anything from him. And then I kind of composed myself and I looked down and I talked to him and I just said, I'm like, I've loved you forever. And it's just an honor to meet. I said the same thing. It's just an honor to meet you. And he's like, I'm so happy to meet you. He's like, you don't need to cry. It's okay. I'm all right. And it was so, and my friend, she comes up and she's like, I love your work. I believe you should be taught in school. She's so composed. And I'm looking at her like, I should have gone second. Like, if I'd gone second, I could have just composed myself a little more.
I told my students that. I said, obviously not the entire literary canon, but in the same vein of an Edgar Allan Poe or a Ray Bradbury or Mark Twain, I said, those guys were not taught in school when they were alive. Yeah. I said, someday Stephen King is going to be on the row of posters that you see in every English teacher's room, mine included. I already have a Stephen King picture in my room. Of course. But I'm saying
You're raising the children right. That's why.
Thank you. He'll be in the ranks of the masters.
Yeah.
He's a national treasure.
Ranks. Yeah. Exactly. He's a national treasure. He's I can't even imagine what it's like to have a brain like that works that way.
I bet you it's a blessing and a curse though, because I bet you there are times when he wants to shut it off and he can't.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was really amazing to read, like on writing and to hear his own personal story and, picturing him with flaws was kind of difficult.
Right.
I mean, he's a person, he's a human and, but it's like you heard all his flaws and, I think there are curses within it. You can't have that much. I think that you can't have that much good without having something in return that's going to
absolutely
balance it out,
And he had a lot of personal tragedy in his own childhood too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
With his whole dad story.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Pack of cigarettes, never came home.
Yep. I know.
Which is why I firmly believe most of the dads in his stories are jerks. Yeah. Dads are always jerks. Always.
Yeah. And it's his own reservations about raising his own children. Right. It's his own being scared of how he was going to be as a father. And I can totally feel all that because my father was not there either. And I can understand exactly how he feels about that. So that was a nice Stephen King segue.
Real quick, one more thing.
Yeah.
I was able to see him at, he went to UMass Lowell.
Mm-hmm.
And were you at that show? Did you see that?
No, I didn't go to that show. No,
it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I've seen it online. I've seen the Lowell show. Yeah,
the best thing ever was when he came out, and so we're all. I mean, it's like literally a stadium, and people are going insane for an author. And he said, "Wow, man!" And all the only way he can do it, he goes, "Wow, man!" He goes, "You guys make me feel like Led Bleepin' Zeppelin." The place went insane. It was awesome.
I love him so much. Did you ever see, there was like this wonderful, they did it for charity. It was him and J.K. Rowling and John Irving. Did you ever see that?
I did not see that, no.
It was great. I don't know if it's on YouTube. It was for children's literacy. It was like a children's literacy thing. And they came out and each one of them read different things. So, and of course, the majority of them were there for J.K. Rowling because at the time, I think like the 5th book was released. Or no, it was the 6th book had been released, but the 7th one wasn't out yet. And so it was all kids mostly. So poor John Irving came out, and I mean, he's a genius, but he came.
Genius.
He came out. Yes, I mean he's amazing, and he came out and he read a piece from one of his books, and people were like nice and like this, and then Stephen came out and he did the From the Body, the story of his name's flying out of my head.
Lardass?
Thank you, Lardass. The boom ba boom ba boom.
Yeah,
he told that story. He read that part of The Body.
That's awesome.
And then J.K. Rowling came out and she read a part of book 6. And then the three of them sat on stage together and they did a Q&A. And a kid in the audience got up and asked if Dumbledore was really dead. And she said, yes, he is. And then he's like, really? He is? And she's like, yes, he is. And it's somebody else asked her, they're like, do you think you'll ever bring him? She goes, no, he's dead. Because she had to keep answering the question. And Stephen King turned to her and he said, is he really dead? And she went, yes, he's really dead.
Because he's a huge loves Harry Potter.
Oh, he does. I know. He loves that series, you know. It was very funny. He's like, really? And she's like, really?
You can tell
Really?
me. Yeah.
Stop asking. Yes.
That's,
It's very cute. If you get to see it, it's really, really funny.
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's my favorite. I love him. Okay, so a couple things. Let's talk about Judd. Now that we've talked
Oh,
about Zelda a little bit, let's talk about Judd. Let's talk about Fred Gwynn. And I wrote perfection from book to movie.
that's exactly what I have. Exactly what I have. Under that, I said he's probably in the top 5 or 10 most perfectly casted characters from any book of all time ever.
Yeah.
He is that character.
Yep. He's perfect. He's perfect.
Perfect.
Like
There's nothing different.
not a flaw.
Nothing, not a change. Exactly.
Yep.
100%.
I agree. Yeah. He's just, I mean, there's not much more that can be said. I mean, but so apparently Mary Lambert wanted him, which I'm sure you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the studio didn't want him because they thought with his Munsters connection.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, they thought that with the Munster that people would laugh when they saw him and it wouldn't
right.
It would, you know, and she insisted. She said, I can't see anyone else playing Judd. And she was right,
Never.
Of course. And
of
she
course.
Fought for that.
And talk about the accent. Talk about the different language. I mean,
it's so
like
perfect. It's so
you want
perfect.
to watch out for that road.
Those damn trucks go by day and night. And that the first time I went to Maine, I'm like, they don't talk like that. They do.
They do.
They got to Maine, and I'm like, they do.
Right?
They all talk like this. I'm like the rud,
right.
and the
Rud.
like. Yeah, and the further you go up, the more it gets like, whew, it's just like real thick. It's crazy. Yep. Another little cool thing I found out is that you know, Fred Gwynn graduated from Harvard, and as did John Lithgow, which I thought was pretty neat.
Did not know that.
Yeah, that they share Judd, and that they were both Harvard alumni. Yeah, awesome. I thought that was kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, I adore Fred Gwynn. I mean, I love the Munsters. I'm a huge Munsters fan.
Likewise.
And, yeah, and he's just brilliant, and I love him as Judd. I love every second of him as Judd. I could just, yeah, his scenes are beautiful.
I actually
go ahead.
I think that the chemistry between him and Dale Midkiff is really good.
Oh yeah.
I really do.
I have a couple notes about that as we go on too. Yeah, about the two of them, because they really do have nice, and you need that. That's something I'll talk about when we talk about the remake too.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure, you know, it's funny. I know it's coming, and we're going to talk about the remake. I hate bashing movies on this podcast. I don't like doing it. I'm going to try not to bash.
Oh, absolutely.
My
I
notes.
Won't bash. I'll just give my honest opinions on things.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think because we're both such fans, and we've read the book so many times, and we've seen the original movie so many times, we can kind of speak to that, you know. And I don't, if someone else likes it, I never go, oh, you're an idiot for, I never do that to anyone.
Never.
I don't like when people tell me what to like, so I don't tell other people what to like. But you know, I have opinions, but we'll get there. On the
It remake, did you like the It remake?
I did like the It remake.
Absolutely.
Did you not like it?
No,
you loved it?
Mm-hmm. Loved it, but people think I'm nuts when I say I still prefer the 1990.
But
you know,
that's cool, because the 90s version is like amazing, and it's steeped in that nostalgia you and I have for that time period.
Of course.
You know, that we both, like, you know, remember that movie being out when we were children, so it's like it's in our head, and it's a good movie. I mean, it's got a great
The effects
cast.
Are a little, you know.
But it's the 90s, and it's television, and you know they didn't have a ton of money, and it's like they did their best with what they had, but they had an amazing cast of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tim Curry.
Yeah. I mean, you know.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, you know, I really, it's funny because let's do an It segue. I love It, so let's talk about It a little bit.
Okay.
This is Stephen King night, so we'll just talk about him just a skosh. But
enough.
I remember seeing the trailer for the new movie and seeing him for the first time, seeing Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, and being like, well, I saw a picture of him first. I think Entertainment Weekly put the picture up.
Yes, they did.
To see what he looked like, and I was like, ooh, I love that he looked Victorian, because I love Victorian period. So I was like, oh my God, he looks Victorian. Like, he's not like a classic clown like Pennywise was in the 90s version. I was like, that's interesting. Right. And you know what I loved? What really got me when I saw the movie, I saw it opening day.
Likewise.
And My husband and I went, and we were sitting there, and the opening scene with Georgie was done so well,
Awesome.
and I was so happy from the moment I saw this was when his eyes were blue, Pennywise's eyes for Georgie, because
Yep.
that moment in the book is so significant to me that he didn't want to trust him, but then he saw he had his mother's eyes and Bill's eyes, and then he trusted
Correct.
him. And I loved that detail. I loved that they put that in. And I remember thinking, oh, they've got such good details in this. Like, I love it, you know. And they changed a lot. They did. But I think they stayed very true to the
Oh,
characters.
they did.
Yeah.
It was the best. It was the best remake you could possibly do.
Hmm.
And Bill Skarsgård was the best other Pennywise you could possibly do. Both genius performances. The cast, genius.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the casting of the Losers Club, spot on.
Yeah. Bill Hader.
Um,
Bill Hader cracks me up in the set when he's
Amazing.
picking on Eddie in this when they're in the Chinese food restaurant. I love. I could watch. I've rewound that scene just to watch it over and over because it makes me laugh every time. And the reason I wanted to bring this up a little bit is because the It remake, you know, really did change a lot of things, but it worked because it was so well written, and they stayed
Exactly.
true to who the characters were.
Correct.
And this is
100%.
this is tying in totally to what we're going to talk about with the remake of Pet Sematary. That's why, you know, that because people say, oh, well, they changed it. Well, yeah, but there's a difference. Like, you have to
Right.
follow some rules, and if you don't, bad things can happen.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get back to the list.
All
So
right.
another cool thing, George Romero was originally supposed to direct,
I
which
knew that.
yeah, that's
I
pretty
knew that.
cool. Yep,
Yes.
and he went off and he did Monkey Shines instead because I guess there was a hold up from them directing. It had been bounced around for a while. I'm sure you know that too because of the
Hmm.
documentary
Yep.
that they. This one executive wanted it to be. She really loved it, and nobody wanted to make it. And then there was a writer's strike, and they needed a perfect script that didn't need rewrites during
Call
the
Stephen
writer's
King.
strike. Yeah. So then they had it. They had Pet Sematary. This one, I guess in the documentary they talk about this. This one like executive was pushing it, and I guess they were like, "We need perfect scripts that don't need to be rewritten." And she went to raise her hand. They're like, "Don't talk about Pet Sematary." And she's like, "But it's perfect. It's
Right.
perfect. It doesn't need anything." And he was like, and they, but they, you know, the thing is it's Stephen King's story, and he's right in Maine, so it's like it was perfect to do. Yeah,
Absolutely.
kind of neat. Um, let's see. So, oh, the other thing. So I have Timmy Baderman's section now, and we talked about the book being a lot scarier. Um, so the book, the reason the book to me is scarier, and I want to know your opinion on this too, is that that whole thing about them knowing secrets, whatever gets inside them, and that Timmy knew all their secrets. That
Hmm.
really, and the description is so vivid. I was telling my husband tonight about that over dinner. I said the description in that scene is so vivid of the sun coming down, and you can see it. You can see him sitting on the back, the father sitting on the back porch. You
Yep.
can see every single thing in it, and it's just terrifying. It's so scary. Like the way Judd talks about how he looked, like he could see where the his head almost got taken off, and he could see
Yep.
all everything about it is so vivid and so well done. And that idea of something knowing all your secrets was really scary. I mean, like it still is. I'm like it gets under my skin like nothing else. I don't know why. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a
He's almost
very
like he's almost like omniscient.
yeah.
He knows everything about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if memory serves me correctly, a few other characters pull that stunt too.
Oh yeah,
Towards the yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like Gage knows
That's
everything.
that's
You
where
know,
I was
like
going.
when
Yeah.
Gage comes back, he knows
Hmm.
everything. This is spoiler heaven, by the way. This podcast. I mean,
Spoiler alert.
I assume people have seen things before we talk. I don't even say spoiler because I'm like, if you haven't seen it, I don't know, don't watch anything like
Right.
that. So I also loved the like the change in it too. I like the fact that like he set fire to like I liked the change in the book from the movie or the movie to the book. I liked the
Hmm.
book originally that Bill Baderman was the one who took out Timmy
Right.
and
Yep.
killed himself and burned the house down. I thought
Hmm.
that was so much scarier than the town mob style coming to the house, you know. So that
Right.
always really got
It's
to
also
me.
darker.
It is much
Right.
darker. I mean, I think of it when his mouth ticking when he talks about how he's
Oh,
gone crazy and he's like
yep.
spills his cigarettes all over the floor and he's just lost it. I mean, and he
Yep.
says, you know, like if I had to live with that, I'd go crazy too, you know. And it's just it's totally telling you what Lewis is going to turn into, you know. And it's like awful. Every time, and every time I read it, I just think to myself, I just want to grab him and go, don't
Hey,
go.
I actually have that in my notes. I swear
Do
to you.
you?
I said the second that he goes back to the cemetery for Gage, it's like being tied up with the train coming down the tracks,
Yeah.
and you have to watch it, and you're
Yeah.
trying to break the fourth wall, saying, "Don't." It's like Pascal. It's
It
like
is.
Pascal going,
Yep.
"Don't do
Don't
it."
do it. Don't go.
You know?
It's like from the moment he makes his decisions, it's like you just go, oh God, please just don't, and that's why the book's so tragic, is because you love all these people. You love the characters. Lewis is a wonderful character. Lewis is, you know, I mean, they talk about in the documentary too, about how, it was very, very chosen that he was going to be a doctor, because doctors heal, and that's, in their
Right.
best work of their job, they heal people, for as long as they can. And that was such a, perfect decision that I know he planned out completely. But you just feel so bad for him, because like as he goes further and further and further down the hill, like you just see him go, and it's the worst. By the end, I'm like, my heart's always broken in the very end of the book, when Steve Masterson sees him
Oh
going over
yeah.
with Rachel, and you're just like, oh, he's gonna bury Rachel now, and you're just like,
Yep.
and he's gone, he's completely gone, and oh, it's just so heartbreaking. It's
One
so
of the
heartbreaking.
100% agree. And I think one of the scariest parts about that concept is if you lived in book or movie world and you weren't the viewer, and you did not know for guarantee the outcome in those horrific situations, the temptation would be very, very tough.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew that there was a place that brought back either
Yeah.
a beloved pet or even a person that died under horrific circumstances, like a Gage situation, way
Yeah.
before his time, did not deserve to die at 3 years old, 4 years old, and you're a father or mother, and you knew absolutely they were going to come back, but you weren't guaranteed the outcome, it's tempting,
Of course.
which is scary,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. I mean, I love what he writes about grief at the opening of the book, and what grief is.
Mhm.
And the two main themes that are in our Pet Sematary are secrets and grief.
Correct.
The secrets we keep, and what we go through with death. Our
Correct.
fear of death, and our fear of the ones we love dying.
Correct.
And, it's funny, because I saw an interview with John Lithgow where he was saying why he doesn't know why people like these movies. Like, he's not like, he wasn't poo-pooing it or anything, but saying like, I don't understand why. And I'm like, and I think John Carpenter said it well when he said, like, it's a safe way to experience scary things,
100% agree.
Yeah.
I when I do that unit, when I do a unit with my kids, doing Edgar Allan Poe, obviously, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, The Monkey's Paw, which is a huge tie-in to Pet Cemetery.
Oh, it is. We're going to talk about that too.
Awesome. I always tell them that there are two types of fear: the controlled and uncontrolled fear. And
Mm,
an amusement park ride, a scary haunted house, Canopy Lake Park, Factory of Terror. Those are controlled fears. No matter how scary it is, you're paying your money, and you know that they really can't get you, and
yeah.
that's why it's fun.
Hmm.
Same thing with Pet Cemetery.
Hmm.
An uncontrolled fear is a knock on the door at 3 a.m.
Hmm.
Now you don't know what that is. That's an uncontrolled fear. So I think that John Carpenter, obviously the master,
Yeah.
hit it right in the ballpark.
Yeah.
It's the safest way for us to experience the terrible
Yeah.
without really having to go.
Exactly. The unthinkable. We can
Right.
experience it, and then we walk away and we're okay. Hopefully.
Absolutely. Right.
So, okay, another cool thing, and this will kind of lead into what we're going to talk about next, which is the new movie.
Mhm.
There was a little bit, there's a couple things actually. I think I'll talk about actually this first. Sorry.
Okay.
So, the original ending, which I'm sure you know about too because you've seen the documentary, was actually, she put her hand on Lewis's shoulder and said, "Darling," and then it went
Mhm.
black, and then you heard him scream, but there wasn't the knife like there is
Right.
and that was the original ending. About the other ending that they had planned, which they had animated in the documentary, which what I've told you about that I hate when things break the fourth wall was,
Refresh my memory. It's been,
so
I
it
haven't seen.
was the phone's ringing, and Rachel's hand picks the phone up, and it's Ellie. And Rachel says in a very calm voice, she's like, "Everything's fine." Like, she's like, "We're going to be a family again." And she looks in the camera and smiles.
Oh boy.
That was going to be the end of the movie. And I was like,
Oh boy.
I'm glad that wasn't the end of the movie.
Right. The first part with the phone call, that's creepy. If she
Yeah.
hadn't broken the fourth wall, that's a
Yeah.
creepy.
I know. I was like, oh, like hearing her voice, And I mean, I love the end of the book, obviously. I love that it's just
Ugh.
her saying darling with the voice full
Ugh.
of, I love the voice full of dirt.
Grating full of dirt.
The voice, I
Right.
was like, oh, it's so scary. It's just so
Yep.
beautifully done. And, and I love the end of the movie. I really do. I like that. I don't mind that there's the knife and all that and her gross eye and all that stuff.
Oh
It's
my
like,
God.
yeah, they brought her back. So they brought Denise Crosby because they had filmed the original ending where you didn't see her. You just saw the hand and then that was
Right.
it. And which I mean, I like that, but they wanted a ending with like a kick,
Of
to
course.
have a scary ending for it.
And it
So
works with the Ramones right there.
it
So
does. It's a perfect. The scream and then the song
perfect.
is perfect.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so that was actually the reshoot ending was the one that we ended up with.
I think
Um,
it's one of the scariest endings
oh, it's great. It's a great ending. It's
because
yeah.
of the ambiguity. I always say to myself, so what happened? Like, what
Hmm.
happens next? And in that world, you have Ellie Creed with her grandparents, who are
Yeah.
horrible people, by the way.
Horrible, horrible
Horrible.
people.
And like you have an undead Rachel just wandering around. Like that's such a wickedly disturbing visual.
In my
You know?
mind, I just think to myself what Judd says, it'll all come they come home to you, and I
Right.
think I think she's gonna go get Ellie. I think honestly,
Uh,
I think she made her way. Like when he talks about when Gage and he says he's gonna grab them and go to Florida. He's like, I just pictured these footprints following me all the. I
right.
think Rachel goes and gets Ellie, honestly, and that's terrifying.
Horrific.
That whole thing is so scary. Ugh.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
Love it.
So another thing I found out in research, and this will lead into us talking about the new movie, is I didn't know this because I didn't buy the DVD of the new movie because I didn't like it very much. So I didn't
Likewise.
didn't buy it.
Yep.
And I hadn't watched it since I saw it. I told you this. I hadn't watched it since I saw it in the theater last April.
Same.
So while I was doing research, I found out I was looking up the writer of the new movie, and there was a little thing that he had written a short called "The Tale of Timmy Baderman," and I went,
Really?
"Yeah,
Mm.
I'll
You
send you
have my
the
interest.
I will send you the link for it." So
Right.
I was like, "Oh wow!" And I look and it's John Lithgow, and I'm like, and it's an extra on the DVD. And
Oh, cool.
basically, what it is it's Judd, and it's so weird. I don't know I don't know where it would have fit in the movie, or if they just did it for fun, or
Hmm.
what it was. But he's sitting out in like the woods, like in the middle of the woods, like where him and Lewis are walking through, and he's wearing his hat, and he's like the same outfit he was wearing when he buried Church. They buried Church, and
Right.
he tells the Timmy Baderman story. But Lewis isn't there with him. It's like he's talking to himself. He's just sitting
Weird.
in the woods. It's very weird. I don't know if it was made
Weird.
as just like this weird. I think it was made as a short, honestly, that they just
Hmm.
did it. But then, of course, he told the story, and of course, they changed it. I'll let you watch it since you haven't
Yeah.
seen it.
Yeah.
But
No,
but
that's awesome. I
but
didn't know that.
they did change the story a little bit, of course, because that's what they
Hmm.
did.
Hmm.
Um, but I was happy that they at least acknowledged Timmy Baderman in some way, that Judd would acknowledge that story. But it was very odd. I'll have to send you the video. But
Well, isn't he in the? He's in the newsreel. The
he is in the news. Yeah, because Lewis sees him
right.
on his computer. Yeah, but they don't.
Yep.
But it's missing something because Judd doesn't tell him that
Oh,
story.
100%. I have that in my notes.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the new movie.
Okay.
Okay, let's do this.
Yep.
Okay, so the new movie was directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Vidmeyer. It was written, the story, it was giving the story credit. Matt Greenberg came up with the story, and the screenplay was by Jeff Bueller. Jeff Bueller also did a lot of, he's a remake person. He did a remake of Jacob's Ladder. He was also involved in the new Grudge movie, the one that just came out. So I think
Hmm.
his forte is kind of remake play. He seems to be a remake person. So that's where he came from. So of course Jason Clarke was Lewis, Amy Semites was Rachel, John Lithgow was Judd, Jeet Lawrence was Ellie, Obsa Ahmed was Pascal, and Alyssa Levine was Zelda. Um, so let's just get right into it and talk about it a little
Okay.
bit. As I said, I didn't watch it. I hadn't watched it since I saw it in April.
Hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about seeing it the first time, like we did with the other one.
Hmm.
Our experiences. Um, so I want to talk about the trailer first. So the first trailer came out, and I was really intrigued. I thought it looked very
Okay.
good. The first
Yep.
trailer looked really good. I was like, this looks really good. It's really
Yep.
spooky. I loved that John Lithgow was playing Judd because I love
Likewise.
him. I was
Yep.
really excited. I like Jason Clarke too, so I was very
Yep.
excited.
Hmm.
And then the second trailer came out,
Right.
and that's when we found out the twist. And
Hmm.
I remember watching it, and I sat there and I went, "What?" I was like, "What's
Right.
happening?" And I was like, "Are they? Is that?" I was like, "It's Ellie." I was like, "Oh goodness, okay." And I'm like, "Why? Okay." And I'm
Which
like,
might have even worked better if they had not shown you that in the trailer.
"Yeah," because then you
You
at least be
know?
like, "Holy crap!" Because they
Right.
even during the movie, that it's like a MacGuffin. He just like goes in, then he's
Totally.
gone, and then he grabs him, and then she gets hit. And I think
Exactly.
if I had seen it in that way, I would have been like, "Whoa," But I don't know if I would have even liked it then, even if I had seen it in the movie. I just was a little
Oh,
like, I went into it. I tried to stay positive. I was like, okay, I'm still gonna go see it, of course. And I'm like, but I'm really nervous about Ellie being the one who dies because I don't know how
likewise.
that's gonna work.
Likewise.
And I'm like, all right, but I'll give it a chance. And I got real excited again when I saw the next trailer and I saw that Zelda crawling across the floor
Loved
from
that.
behind. I was like,
Loved it.
oh, that looks so
Yep.
scary. And
Loved it.
I felt my old anxiety come up and I'm like, oh boy, I'm so excited to see this. And I went to see it. It was probably like the second night it was out, and I went with some friends of mine. It was so funny because my poor husband, he loves like he'll watch movies with me. He's not a huge horror fan, but he will watch stuff. He's really into Joe Bob Briggs with
Good
me, so
husband.
he loves Joe Bob Briggs like I do. And so we every Friday night he loves him, so he watches anything that's on there. But he was like it's so funny because I've been going, I don't know if this movie's gonna be. I was just my anxiety brain was going nuts. And we went to dinner with my friends who were going to see the movie with me. And my friend Laura, she says, "Are you going to go to the movie?" He looks at her and goes, "No." He says, "Because I'm going to have to hear about this movie for like weeks." I know.
Right.
He's like, and I don't want to go see it because she's going to be up. He knew I was going to be upset because I was like,
Right.
I don't know. And we went to see it, and I had a very, I had a very visceral reaction to it. I was not happy. I was not a
Oh,
happy camper.
I remember that you messaged me right afterwards, and we were both the same exact way.
We were, yeah.
100%.
And it was, and we'll talk about all the reasons why, but I had a very, I very rarely I got up in the middle of the movie. It was after Zelda when we found out that Zelda fell down a dumbwaiter. I was like, I have to go get a drink. And I got up and like walked. I said to my friends, I'll be right back. Do you want anything? Well, they're like, you're getting out. I said, yep, I'm going to go pee and go get a drink because I got to get away
Right.
from this for a second. I'm like, I just got to get away. I don't care. Just tell me, like I'll come back. I was so not into it at that point.
Oh,
At that point, I was so disappointed by everything I'd seen. And that was just a kicker for me that I went, why? Which
because
I said out,
it almost renders her spinal meningitis to be nothing.
which they
Because
never
the
talk
dumb
about. If you
exactly.
notice, they never
Exactly.
talk about. They never say what she has in the
Yep.
movie, and you're
Yep.
like, okay, what? She just has a deformed body for no reason, and you're not going to talk
Exactly.
about what. We'll get there, but
Of
yeah,
course.
I was annoyed. I got up, I came back, and I just sat there. I sat there like this the whole movie.
I think I was the same way.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I'm like, I kept going. And my friends are like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "No, no, I'm not." And they're like, "Okay, okay." And they're like, "The movie's really bad." I'm like, "Yeah." They're not as big fans of
Right.
they like Stephen King a lot and they love horror movies. And they didn't, my friend Laura, she said, if it was just a random movie, maybe it would be okay. Like we'd be like, "Oh, that one was all right." Like we go see all kinds of horror movies together. And
Mhm.
she's like, "But it wasn't Pet Cemetery. It wasn't
It
like
wasn't.
And I was very
And
the movie ended, and then I'm like, and a crappy cover of the Ramones. I was like, I'm
oh my
done.
God.
I was like, I'm so done, and I gotta go.
Have it in my notes.
Me too. And
Oh my
I
God.
was so angry. I was so angry.
So like tame and watered down and clean. Oh, I can't even get into it.
awful, awful.
And I even
Yeah,
said, I think I said in theaters, like, well, that version of the song makes sense for that version of the movie.
yeah, crappy.
You know?
I know, I can't help it.
And as
so-
fans, you want them to be good. If they're going to remake something you love, you're not rooting against it. You want to
No.
love it. It's another thing geek out.
Absolutely. I see all the remakes. I've seen every single one of all the big horror movies. I've seen every single one. Some I've been like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then I'm like, that was really bad. It's like,
Exactly.
but at least like, I think because it's my favorite, I was like, I know I'm gonna be really critical and upset and
Of
judge
course.
it very, harshly.
As you should.
Yeah. So let's get into it a little bit.
Right?
um, Besides what we've already gotten into, because we have the same reaction pretty much.
I love it.
Um, so right off the bat, that they're from Boston, not Chicago.
Mhm.
I feel like Boston's not far away enough.
Agreed.
Yeah, I feel like Boston's you're near Maine. You probably went
I
to
was gonna say,
Maine.
right.
Yeah, but if you're from the Midwest, you probably have never been there, and it's such a different world that it just felt too close to me. I was like,
Yep.
why are they from Boston? Why are they doing that? I don't understand that change. I was like, I just literally, this is my notes as I watched it the other day.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like not as much of a fish out of waters, like for
no,
them, you know?
yeah, yeah, it's supposed to change their whole world, and
Like they've probably already been to Maine before at
yeah,
some point.
yeah, on a vacation or
Right.
whatever, because everybody, if we're from here, you've been to New Hampshire, you've been to Maine, you've
Yeah.
been to Connecticut, you've been to Rhode Island. We're all in that same New York. You've been all in the same area.
Mhm.
Um, One of my major things, and it's funny because I told you like I was rewatching it because I really couldn't remember it because I think I blocked so much out.
Likewise.
Like there were things that made me the angriest I remembered, or the things that upset me the most. But then
Right.
everything else I was like, I don't remember what happened. Like it just
Hmm.
bled out of the memory.
Yep.
Judd. Now I love John Lithgow. I love him to pieces, and it's not his fault. He did
It's
his
not.
best.
He did.
Judd was mean and creepy.
Yep.
And when, like, the fact that he didn't meet Lewis at the top, meet all of them at the top of the
Yep.
story, really bothered me because it set the tone right there for, as we said before, the very important relationship that happens between
100%.
the very first line of the book is that Lewis met the man who should have been his father.
His father.
And
Yep.
that is powerful. That tells you that's what that story is about. And that relationship is so special. And for them to swing it that way and make it toward Ellie, I was like, okay, but he was just that whole like I'm a whole old curmudgeon who lives in a house and this little girl has now opened. I didn't buy any
Right.
of it. I was like, I don't buy that he opened his heart to her. He just seemed to
Right.
always be, because it seemed like, from the moment you saw him, when he sees Ellie in the pet cemetery and he yells at her and then she
Yep.
gets stung by the bee, which they
That's where I first had a problem, is when he yelled at her.
yelled at her.
I
Yeah,
was like, what? That's
yeah,
not Judd.
that's not
What's
Judd.
going on here?
Judd doesn't yell. Judd's not a
That doesn't
creep.
yell.
Yeah, and he looked like, did he look like pedophile central when Rachel came to the thing? I'm like, yeah, like you find your daughter alone with an old man who's like
And it
over
was just the
her.
way it was directed. It was like
Yeah,
wide shots. Like
yeah,
I totally
yeah.
100% see that.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, and that bothered from the moment it came on. I was like, just the fact that him and Lewis didn't have a relationship. They didn't.
Oh,
Honestly,
absolutely not.
the couple talks they had, it was like there was no relationship there. He never went over and sat with him, and they had him over for dinner and stuff and whatever. But it was like he never went and like had a beer with them, which was such a special part of it. It was like so many
No,
problems.
listen, you're 100%. When they're having a beer in the movie, I'm like, I want to have a beer with them like I want to join that conversation. I don't want to join the new one's conversation
No.
or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Or like even a better way to put it is I would love to have Judd from '89 as a neighbor, but not this Judd.
No.
You see
No.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely. No. It's
And
100%.
Judd, when I watched it again, I put some characterization things for Judd. Judd's one of my favorite. He's probably my favorite character in the entire movie. But even he has some shade. Even the original Judd character has some weird, shady things they never get to the bottom of.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, like the fact that he knows exactly what's going to happen, but shows them anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
Why?
I think that that the ground had a lot to do with that, like what it made him do. And I think
Fair enough.
he had, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think he had all good intentions. I don't think he had any sinister intentions. I just think that
No, neither do I. No.
he enjoyed sharing that secret with Lewis. I mean, you see it when you go back to even to the 89 movie, you see it when he's like, when they're up at the burial ground and he turns and he smiles at him while he's
Yep.
smoking his cigarette and he's watching
Right.
him.
Yep.
There's that moment where he turns and smiles in this weird way because like he
Mm-hmm.
loves that he's sharing. He's like, I can't wait that he's going to find out that this is what you know, it's that weird when you have a good
Well,
secret.
imagine if you knew that secret and you were
Yeah.
letting somebody in on it.
And you're going to let somebody know, like, look at this, watch this, you know, it's like, and he definitely had that because he was friends with him and he wanted him to not, you know, not have to tell Ellie what happened. He loved the
Right.
family already. He was like, I don't want any of that to happen. And, you know, I think like, you know, the change in the 89 movie, of course, you know, was that, you know, there's no Norma from the book, you know, his wife isn't alive, and they had to add in a death to have a death happen so that Rachel could be covered in it, you know, and like her fear of death and why that would be there. And of course, it was Missy Dandridge
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
instead. But like that still took care of all those characters. You know what I
Of
mean? It
course.
still took care of everybody. It still took care of everyone's like needs for what they had in the book, you know, and you know, I would the like all right, on a positive note, for Judd, I loved that they mentioned Norma. I love that
And had her
Norma
little
was.
picture. Yep, that was awesome. That
I
was
was
great.
happy with that. I was like, oh, cool, they're going to mention Norma. That's pretty neat. She's not alive, but they're going to mention her. That's
Mm-hmm.
cool, you know. And I was really happy about that. Um, so yeah, the relationship, the lack of relationship in the new movie was very upsetting to me between Lewis and Judd because I'm like, that's a
Oh,
central thing, and
it's just a big dull void. You
it
know,
is.
it's like you don't care.
No, no, because there's nothing special and you don't understand. He just seems like a old crotch who just, you know, and I don't believe he loves Ellie. Like the way it was written, I'm like, I don't believe
Right.
he loves Ellie. Like I don't believe he
Right.
made this big turnaround and,
He
you
pulls the
know,
bee stinger out, which in the book was Gage.
it was
You
Gage.
know,
Yep, yep. And it's
pulls the
it,
bee stinger out, and then
yeah,
that's it. You
yeah.
know.
And then all of a sudden he's like, she touched my heart later. I'm like,
Right.
when? It's
And it's
like,
not like he ever talks about like losing a daughter. If they had put that in there, then you could
yeah.
maybe see that. You
Mm-hmm.
know. But
Oh yeah, yeah. It was,
yeah.
yeah. Um, the fact that like none of them get introduced to the pet cemetery, she finds it on her own. That
Right.
bothered me. That
Yep.
it's supposed to be a thing that they do as a family because it's going to affect all of them. That's important.
Right.
I
Yep.
like the fact that that was left out really bothered me. The fact that Lewis had never been there
I
before,
know.
you know, like until he goes with you know Judd to Berry Church, he'd never been there, and I'm like,
That's right. I didn't even like put two and two together. I just watched it
yeah,
yesterday. Yeah, it's true.
yeah. It's just one of those things that I was like, that's just ridiculous.
And I didn't like the CGI weather, the lightning, fog. Like
No,
CGI automatically says to me that's CGI.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and some CGI is great. I love
Hmm.
some CGI. Lord of the
Hmm.
Rings, probably the best. Still amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely. Yeah.
the one in '89 works so good.
Oh yeah.
You know,
They did a great job. And it, you know, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but like it's Maine, you know, it's just that Maine has that look, you know, this one was filmed in Canada
Mhm.
and, you know, it, it just didn't have the same stuff. It didn't look the same. It didn't have the same, you know, they had to create all that, you know.
I'm sure you've seen the filming locations videos on YouTube.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Like the burial ground in the '89 one, it's like a real place.
Yep.
Like it's not a burial ground, but like
Yep.
that's exactly what it looks like. Let's just
Yep.
go there and
Stumps are still there. The rocks are still there. Like all.
you know,
I
bucket
mean,
list.
yeah. Oh, me. Oh, definitely. I've never been back there. I've been to the house.
Awesome.
The Creed's house.
Mhm.
I've driven by and seen
Awesome.
it looks the same. It looks
I know.
it's the
Yep.
yellow. It's the same house. I was like, it
Yep.
was so funny because I went with my ex and we drove and it's a hill and you come over the hill and I went, there it is. I was like, there it is. I
Yes.
see it. I was like, oh my God, there it is. I was like, and you know, it was really, really cool. And of course, I've seen the church and, you
Yep.
know, I went up all and down Bangor and Norrington and all that area to see, like, you've been to Bangor, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You've gone and see all the places, you know, the
I have not
standpipe.
done that because I was actually going. We went for a bachelor party, and yeah, like for a friend's bachelor party, and so
Yeah.
we were. It was in Maine. We went camping in Maine and fishing and all that stuff. It was great.
Yeah.
And I said, "Listen," I said, "You guys are into this." I said, "I have to drive by Stephen King's house. I have to see Stephen King's house.
Yeah.
I don't care what I have to do. I have to."
Yeah.
So, 100%. And they did. They let me know at a Dunkin' Donuts. I
Yeah.
pulled it. I said, "Hey, Stephen King's house." Yeah, just go right a bit. Like they've been asked that a million times.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, the first time I went, God, I was like in my early 20s the first time I went, and we found it, and because we'd gone to Bet's bookstore, and Stu told us where it was, and I was like, okay, and we went up, and I took my first picture. It's so funny because we were going to visit someone, and we were going past Bangor, and then we came back through, and I said, can we stop again? Because the first time I went, I was literally like holding in the picture, I'm like holding my shirt down, and I'm like, take the picture, and I ran back in the car because I didn't want to offend him. I didn't
Right.
want him to like think I was some weirdo. And then when we went to visit the bookstore, he said to us, he goes, "Go stand right in front of the gate and take it." He doesn't care. Like, just take a. And I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, don't be afraid." Because I
Think
was
how
like, "I
many
didn't."
people have done it. You know.
Exactly. He goes, he doesn't. He goes, just don't. As long as you don't go on the property, he doesn't care if you take a million pictures in front of the gate. He doesn't care. So it was like, okay. So the next time I went, I was right in front of the gate, like. It's like
Right.
the first time was like, take it, and I ran back in the car. But I love that whole area is so
Amazing.
cool, and you get to see all those spots from it. Um, okay, so let's get back into it. So Pascal, let's talk about Pascal a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, I didn't like the way they did Pascal. I didn't.
In the new one, I feel like saying "pass who?
Yeah,
Passe? It's
yeah,
not pass now. It's passe.
yeah.
It's
He
nothing."
he just he was just. Oh, he was just poorly written. I mean, it's not the actor's fault. None of the
Nope.
actors, I don't think any of the actors in it, I mean, a couple of them milked it a little hard, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it was any of their fault because it just wasn't
Acting was
written.
fine.
Yeah, it just
The
wasn't
way it was
written
written.
well. Yeah, and this poor guy, I was like, I think you also had Brad Greenquist to stand up against, who we didn't discuss too much around the first movie, but like he's so brilliant in the first
Oh
movie.
my god,
I
amazing.
mean, the way they wrote him and that they made him this angel, and he's just there to, and it's funny because I remember as a kid, when I saw it again when I was like 16, I remember watching it and going, he's not quite as scary as it goes on because he's more like looking out for them, than he
Yeah,
is,
he's like a combination of like Jacob Marley
hmm
and Jiminy Cricket. He's
Yeah,
almost like Lewis's. He's like Lewis's conscience,
yeah, that's
in
a
a
good way
way,
to
but
put it.
also a messenger of like a warner of don't do this,
Yeah, yeah,
And as the movie goes on, like you said, he always has this underlying presence. Even when he's not there, he's still there in a way,
yeah, yeah.
And in the new one, they don't do that. And then I wrote this down. Um, in the original, like one of the best lines, the ground is sour, sour, sour.
hmm
And he screams it in the new one, the ground is sour. Like,
Yeah,
does not work. It's so
yeah.
much,
It was
you
just
know?
he wasn't ever kind. It was just a scream, and it wasn't ever like not just the scream, but it was just the way it was done the entire time. Anytime he was on screen, I was like, this poor guy. I was like, this character is just a scary character, and he's not supposed to be like that. He's supposed to be just this,
Agreed.
as you said. That's a lovely way to put him. That he is like his conscience. He is like Jiminy Cricket. Um,
Yeah,
I'm. It's unfortunate. It's very
it
unfortunate.
is.
Yeah, and I mean he looked good. I mean, like it looked,
Great.
like it
It's
was
awesome. And the
scary, and it was,
makeup and everything was
oh yeah, the makeup was awesome, and it was gross,
great.
and yeah, yeah. So that was another one. The kids in the mask. So when I saw that in the original trailer, the first trailer, I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I like the
Mm-hmm.
masks.
Yep.
But then when I saw the movie and you see the kids, it's like it's very cult like and weird.
Yep.
And I'm like, it feels like foreboding when it shouldn't feel foreboding. It should just feel like
Right.
kids going to bury animals in the pet cemetery. You know what I mean? Like it's just normal kids
And it's like
going and
never
doing this.
alluded to again.
No,
Ever.
no. Except when Ellie has
And
the mask later, a mask that she
right.
takes from the thing,
But like why they do it like that, like who those kids are, who
Yeah,
taught them that.
yeah.
Um, Rachel's reaction is so underplayed. She's like, "Oh, looks like a procession." Can you imagine seeing that go by your house with
Yeah,
your
the kids are
daughter?
like, with the masks on looking at
Yeah,
you. I'd be like,
like just a procession.
get in the house. Get in the house.
Yeah,
These weird kids are in the back here. I'm like, I've seen Village of the Damned. Get out of here.
exactly.
Oh my God. I would totally be like, get out of here. Go, 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 go. Yeah, when I saw it in the trailer, when I saw the look of it, I was like, oh, this is so neat. But then when I saw the movie, I'm like, no, it doesn't really
It
work
didn't
well.
work.
No,
Yep.
no. Um, so let's see. I talked about Ellie befriending. Let me go down my list. Um, the the talk with Ellie about death when she finds the pet cemetery, that bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
So Rachel brings in religion, like real strong about
Mm-hmm.
heaven, and I'm like, okay, and I'm like, why is she talking? Like, Rachel doesn't want to talk about death at all.
Right.
Like Rachel's character shouldn't want. She just immediately in the book and in the '89 movie, she immediately when death is brought up, it's like, no, we're not talking about that. It's done, and that's who that character is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll talk about it now. I have it in my notes for later. But
Sure.
one of the things that they were thinking of, I don't know if you know this, was they were thinking of not putting Zelda in the movie,
In the new one?
in the new one. Did you know
Oh
that?
God, did not know.
So if you get a chance, if you haven't heard it, Mick Garris has a wonderful podcast called Postmortem, and he
Nice.
talks to all kinds. He's talked to Stephen King. He's had all these great people on it because he's awesome, and
Mm-hmm.
he had Dennis and Kevin on right around the time the movie was released, and they had talked about how they didn't want to have Zelda because, when I heard this before I saw the movie, I was like, okay, if you didn't have her, that means you don't care about Rachel. That means that
Correct.
Rachel's no one in the movie.
Right.
She's just no one. Because if
Right.
you don't have her, you don't understand why Rachel is who she is and why she's afraid. And it was because they were afraid because they knew it was such a sticking point in the original. They were afraid to do it because they knew that they maybe couldn't top it. You know what I mean?
Of
So they were
course.
like, they said they were so impressed with, Andrew and the performance, and they were like, how are we going to top this? But then they said, well, ours is going to be scarier because we're doing the book. We're going to have she's going to be a young girl in it, like she is in the book. And I was like, they said ours will be scarier. And I'm like,
Yeah. Right.
I know you're
Uh,
talking it up because it's your movie, but I'm
for,
like, okay, like you're afraid to do it, but then you're telling us it's going to be scarier. I'm like, all right, okay, and right there, that stuck in my brain, and that bothered me because like I said, I was like, that means you don't care about her. If you
Mhm.
take if you take Zelda out, you don't care about Rachel. You're not taking,
100%.
as we said, taking care of characters. If you're going to change the story, you just have to leave things in place that are going to take care of the characters, like
Mhm.
they did in It, like they did in the original movie. Even though they changed things, it's like it's still, you're not changing the fundamental character and who they are. You know.
Yep.
So that's my take on it. She, like, Rachel didn't show any fear or apprehension. Like, I didn't feel like she did. And
Yep.
then that Ellie knew about Zelda,
Right.
that made me go. I had forgotten about that. I literally wrote
Right.
with exclamation points on my phone. I'm like, Ellie knows. I'm like, Rachel would have never. She didn't even talk to her husband about it. Like, it was
Right.
like, he knew, but he didn't know what happened because she didn't want to talk about it. And I'm like, that completely undercut the story. I said, the fact that everybody knows about it, I'm like, it's not a secret anymore.
The
You know?
questions that both versions of Ellie ask are very, very realistic questions for kids to ask, though.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
sure.
the questions were great.
Yeah.
It's just like you said, her reaction and getting, very, very, like, because it actually splits them. Lewis comes out and says he doesn't believe in heaven.
Yeah.
So you think that that's like going
Mm-hmm.
to be a plot point that his wife's a believer and he's not, and it doesn't turn into anything.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, he also says, like, going against what Lewis originally says, he says, "Oh, we'll be for a long time. Don't worry." And it's like, yeah, you tell your kid that, but I'm also like, and I know that he said it too, but it was just like I think it was the contrast between how she reacted and he react. I was like, I'm not buying this. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not buying how the characters were.
Mm-hmm.
I
I know.
know this is
I
rough.
rewatched it just for you.
I
I
know you
rewatched it
did.
just for you.
And I rewatched it just for you for this because I was
Yep.
like, I said to myself, I'm like, I have to rewatch it because I don't remember it, honestly. And I did. Yeah.
There were a few things I liked. There were a few.
There were a few too. I have a couple coming up.
Yep.
So there's way too many jump scares. There's
Yep.
way too many. I counted 4 in the first 22 minutes.
Easy.
4. And I was like, the truck.
The truck.
The truck's the first one, and then Pascal, and then it just, like, there's one after. It's just, and movies that rely on jump scares, there's no substance at that point. You go, that's all you're relying on. A couple well-placed ones are great,
Of
but
course.
you have them every 5 minutes. You can't, then it's just,
Zelda in the original running up to the camera is the anti-jump scare, and it's the scariest thing I've ever seen.
oh yeah,
It's not a
absolutely.
jump scare at all.
No,
No,
Nope.
doesn't have.
Nope. It's like, because
No.
by the time you realize she's running at you, you don't even have time to jump. You're just like, You know, like there she is,
Right.
great, screaming
Yep.
in the camera, wonderful, because that's
Yep.
what I need to see. You know, yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, and there's a couple in the original. I'm not anti jump scare, not at all. But
Neither am I.
when they're overly done, it's just it's they didn't put
Same.
enough into it. You know,
Mhm.
um, God, I'm looking
Go
at my
ahead, hit
notes.
me with it.
All right, the fact that Lewis tells Rachel that Church died.
Right.
There's
Yep.
no secret.
Nope.
There's no nothing. Um, the fact that they're home. I wrote no
Mhm.
secrets, exclamation point, exclamation point.
Yep.
That really I remember now when I looked back and I watched it, I remembered in the theater, I went, he told her. He told her. Why? I'm
Mhm.
like, well, what's the secret? There is no secret,
No.
And I'm like, okay. So now Rachel knows that Church died and
One of
now,
the two themes,
yeah,
secrets.
yeah, yeah. Rachel knows. And I'm like, they're home. Okay, great, wonderful. You know, um, I think that, you know, now that I wrote Zelda, dumbwaiter, why? That's what I wrote.
Mhm.
Because that,
I put dumb waiter, dumb decision.
yeah, it was just that decision. I don't understand why they did that. I have absolutely no idea. I'm like, how did she get out of bed? One,
Right.
she could barely move. Like,
Mhm.
how did she fall down a dumbwaiter? I'm like, the girl couldn't drag herself across. I'm like, it made no sense. And I know because they didn't touch upon what happened to her, but you saw her body. She couldn't get
Mhm.
up. So I'm like,
Mhm.
this just makes no sense. Like, and it wasn't scary at all. Like when she finally like told her, I'm like, when you saw her, I just was like, she's not scary. She's
Nope.
not, there's nothing foreboding about her. She's
That's what
just
I have in
this,
my notes.
yeah, she's just this,
How can Zelda not be scary?
yeah. I mean,
You know.
I know a young girl played her, but I mean, the makeup was cool. She looked cool, but there was nothing there. There was nothing. I had a moment, and I'll tell you this, it's funny, and I think it's later on, but there was a moment where Rachel as a little girl was remembering and she's looking down the hallway and she sits up in bed and she looks at her.
Yes.
And I had a moment where I went, ooh, and then it
Yep.
died. There was nothing.
Right.
And I just went,
You had a good moment.
yeah, like I thought she was going to say something to her, and
Mhm.
or even talk about like they didn't. If you're going to have her as a kid, talk about the book a little, like how she would deliberately, pee her bed, so they had to,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like show
Mhm.
her being manipulative, and
Mhm.
that would have made her scarier if you talked about like how she really was, but they didn't.
Yes.
They just had her
Nope.
moaning in bed, and then she fell down a dumbwaiter, and I'm like, and
And
people,
the new one also didn't have the ridiculously creepy painting of her in the
no,
movie,
no,
which Gage like turns in. Yeah.
the outfit and everything, and she's wearing the
Oh
outfit,
my God.
which I love. And then
It's
when she,
so
oh
scary.
yeah, well, because
That
that's in the
belongs in the
book.
haunted mansion.
Oh
Yeah.
God, I know. It's like that. That painting is beautiful. I do like, actually, one of the notes I did put was that I do love the painting of them two as little girls that's on the wall in the parents' house. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yep.
I liked that little painting, but of course they don't have that great creepy painting,
Right.
which is
Oh
with
my
the gray
God.
cat and everything. And it's funny, I probably didn't put that together until maybe like 10 years ago. I'm looking at it going, oh my God, the gray cat. Oh my God. I'm like, oh
Yep.
wow. It's
Yep.
like, it's so creepy. It's like, it's perfect,
But like you said, the fever dream aspect, like Zelda turning into Gage is such a surreal
Yeah.
thing, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, and it's perfect because you can see that Mary completely understood the story and the fact that
Hmm.
when you're afraid of something, you build it up in your own mind.
Hmm.
I'm sure Zelda wasn't that scary,
Right.
as a kid, but to her now, she's horrifying because she's built her up in this way of being
It's
scared.
like
When you're
Chopper and Stand By Me.
exactly. It's like that, that you have this thing and you're like, that's what it is, and then you see it what it really is, and you're like, it's not quite as scary as and
Hmm.
yeah, just
Yep.
so many things that don't work. um,
Keep them going. There's
I
a
just
lot.
so I kind of repeat myself a couple times here, but I'm like, Judd is so badly written. I said no relationship. One of the
Mhm.
biggest travesties of this movie. There's no
Absolutely.
relationship. I did say that, besides the fake lightning, which I agree with, that the scenic design was okay. Like I liked the water and like the bones under the water when he walked. I thought
Hmm.
that was kind of neat. I was like
Hmm.
kind of Little God Swamp and like referring back to
Yeah,
that.
that's fine.
I liked that. I thought that was pretty cool. That's one of my positive ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he's very flippant about the church resurrection. Lewis is very flippant about it. It doesn't, there's no shock there. There's no, I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Rachel knows, and then the two of them have that little, like, meeting together in front of the closet in front of church,
Mm-hmm.
like, glad you're not a vet, kind of thing. I was like, it just lost something from that moment when
Of course, because
when
it's so
he's,
unrealistic. It
it
would not
is
happen like.
like, you didn't know that was going to happen.
Of
So,
course.
and it feels, even though he looks around the room and he goes, and it's like, you didn't know that was going to happen. So you'd open that door and go, holy shit. Like, and I know that like Lewis, when he, when he realizes what happened, he thinks he was in shock. He rationalizes the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Says like, this is what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what happens. It's just like, oh yeah, he's alive. And then he goes over to see Judd and he's like, that cat was dead. And he's like, but it's just, the way it's done is just, I was so flippant. That's the
The,
word I
be-
come up with,
the beginning of that scene could have worked well with the reveal of them going to Ellie and saying he ran away, and she's like, no, he's right there.
Yeah.
I liked that one little aspect of that. That was a good reveal.
Yeah. Oh, it was a good reveal. Yeah. Yeah.
You
That, like, for her to say that and for the two of them to be like, what?
Yeah,
That
he's
was
right there.
cool. But I think the conversation, I was just like,
Yeah, that's
you don't
exactly.
seem shocked. Like, you kind of were like, what? Okay, great. It was just.
Well, the Gage death scene, I don't know if that's in your notes coming up or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
I felt the exact same way
Mm-hmm.
with death scene of Gage in this one versus 89. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know Dale Midkiff gets a lot of crap. I never had a problem with his performance as
I
Louis
don't
Creed.
either. I don't.
Ever.
I don't
Thank you.
either. I
Thank
know. He's a bit melodramatic, but it works for the role,
you. It
and
does.
it's like, but I don't. There's no point that I don't buy that he's going through what he's going through. I don't.
100% agree.
There's no point that I go, oh, he's not. He's fine. He doesn't seem fine. Like like when he goes through everything, and I mean, we didn't talk about it, and we probably should touch on it a little bit because you did mention Gage and the death scene, which is really hard for me to watch too. That's another scene, and I don't have
Oh,
children, but it's hard for every time I watch it. Denise Crosby's scream goes right through me every time when she's
oh,
screaming at him. And that run he does, and you see Judd behind him trying to
oh.
run, and his hat falling off, and like and it's done so well,
Mm-hmm.
and it's done perfectly. It's really
It's
really, for such a
heart-wrenching.
horrifying moment. Yeah, it's gut
One of
wrenching
the
every
sad,
time.
it's one of the saddest scenes ever.
Yeah, yeah,
Ever.
it's
The way,
awful.
and it's very quick. It's not a long scene,
No,
you
no,
know.
no.
But the effectiveness, and I grant part of the effectiveness to Dale Midkiff when he screams,
Yeah,
when he screams that no,
yeah, yeah.
it's a lot better than Vader's no in Revenge of the Sith, and a
It's
lot more
true.
effective.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
true.
mean, I put in that, I said the perfect reaction, which God forbid I hope anybody ever has to go through, but I can't imagine any other reaction if that happened than his reaction.
Yeah, yeah.
And he gets a lot of crap for it. But like you said, Denise Crosby screaming and Judd trying, and I don't know how they did this to this day because of no CGI, but there's a half a second shot edit of Miko Hughes standing in the road and the truck is coming right towards him.
I know how they did it. I know
You
how
do
they
know
did
how
it.
they did it.
Yeah, they talk about the documentary. Actually, I was gonna go. I was gonna go
I
there.
saw the documentary like last
Yeah.
year or something.
So, how they did it, and it's really cool, is they used a mirror. There's a
That's
mirror
right.
in the road, and they could.
It just came back to me. You're
Yep.
absolutely right.
So Miko was never in danger. Like Miko was in the, like they could tilt the mirror, and the truck never went more than 10 miles an hour. The
Mm-hmm.
truck never went really fast. By the way, the truck's still in Maine. It's
I
in
know.
like, yeah, I really want to go see
know.
it.
Yep.
It was built
Yep.
for the movie, and it's still there.
It's just sitting in like a lot
A
somewhere.
lot. Yeah, you can go see it.
Serious.
Yeah, they'll
And
let you go see it. I know. I was like,
Yep.
oh my God, I want to go see it so badly. But yeah, they tilted the mirror so that when the truck was, it looks like he's right in front of it, and he's not. Yeah,
Fair
that's
enough.
how they. I know, and but it's still
Just
so.
run it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's still so effective and still so beautifully
The
done.
little
And
bloody shoe. His little shoe.
no, I know, and it's funny because like my husband said to me, because he hadn't seen the movie in a while, and he was like, "Is that how it's written in the book?" And I said, "No, honestly." I was like, "In the book, it just kind of happens. It's like
Flash forward. Yep.
Yep. I said it literally, he hits you with, Lewis and Gage have this beautiful day flying a kite together, and it's really nice. And then all of a sudden, it just says, and Gage, who had less than 3 months to live, went to sleep.
Yep.
Like, and then the next chapter starts, and he's gone.
Yep.
It's like it says Lewis's last happy day was this day, and then this happened, and I said when they do reveal it, it's done in pieces, and it's not done in anything. He reveals stuff as it goes on, like everything, how unfair it is and what happened, but he just talks about it in pieces that it doesn't hit you like a truck, like no pun intended, but like it doesn't hit you like it does in the movie. It's like they can't do that in the movie. Obviously, they have to do the moment, just make it happen, and then that's it. But
equally heart-wrenching scene is his funeral.
Oh yeah,
with the in-laws.
Uh-huh.
Like that's like
which they totally ignored in this movie, which I have in
not
my
even in
notes
there.
too. Nope.
Yes.
Like
nope.
that relationship, and that is special too. Leaving that out because that made the family an island. Because Lewis had no family. His mom was gone. His dad was gone. He had no family. Rachel's his family. The kids are his family.
Right.
The fact that they don't get along with the in-laws made that Rachel and Lewis and Ellie and Gage their own island, and that's special. That makes it like we need each other a lot because we don't have any extended family. And that makes it even more tragic. And the fact that they left that out, they kind of allude to it. I don't know if you noticed this, is that the father gives him some dirty looks. The father looks at Lewis a couple times like, he doesn't say anything, just gives him stink
But if you're not
eye.
looking for it, it could go right over your head.
Oh, absolutely. It's like at the
ever.
funeral, he looks at Lewis like, and Lewis kind of says something before he says like, oh, maybe we could even invite your parents, and he laughed. And that was like a little allusion, like,
but that could be in a like Ben Stiller comedy, like
exactly.
Not even part of his character.
Yeah. And it's like, unless you've read the book or seen the original movie, just like we're talking about The Shining, you wouldn't know. You'd be like, I don't know what that was. Like, I don't know if that's even a point, but that's another moment. Let's see. So we talked about this a little bit too, but Judd not telling him stories, really bothers me. Judd tells him a little bit when they finally have their sit down talk about everything. He talks about the Wendigo a little bit, but he doesn't tell him the Timmy Baderman story.
Nope.
He doesn't, he never tells him anything. It's like he's just, it just doesn't. There's no relationship that adds into more of the relationship thing.
Judd lies about that in the original when he says, "Has anyone ever buried a person? Christ on his throne, no."
And he's like,
It's interesting that he didn't tell him the truth there, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the wonderful thing is when he says, you said no, and he's like, you didn't need to know then. Now you need to know. You didn't know what happened then, and that. Oh, and
another. I'm sorry, continue.
No. I was just saying that's another secret that was kept until it needed to be revealed. We don't have that in this one.
Of course, we don't have a lot in this one. Can we talk about how, and I know this is it's such a small thing, but as a diehard fan, it's going to annoy you.
Yeah.
Judd's dog in the new one is Biffer. Biffer. Exactly.
I think at that point I was so disgusted anyway. I think you found it pretty early, I think, but I was kind of like, what, why, what? It just, we'll talk about the hubris of this at the end of the end.
Fair enough.
But there's a lot of it. There's a lot of that going on.
It's just such a minor detail they could have kept.
I know. It was
dog Spot, man.
I don't understand why. I don't understand a lot of their motivation. I don't get why it was written the way it was. I don't understand why it was directed the way it was. There's many things I don't understand. So let's see. No, we talked about the no bad relationships. So let's talk about Lewis. We've talked about Judd. We've talked about Lewis. This movie was so unfair to Lewis. So unfair to his character.
Agreed.
The first moment when he left church out in the woods, I was disgusted. And I sat there and I was like seething with rage. One, because I love animals. One, to watch an animal even an animal that's come back from the dead. And he's kind of, but I said, that is not what Lewis would do. I'm like, Lewis, and I'm like, and that is awful. I was like,
it's cruel.
You
can't build sympathy for the character. Like, no matter what happens, you can't feel fully bad for him.
Nope. And I'm like, and if he had euthanized him like he was going to do right before, You're like, when he was about to euthanize him, then I'm like, no, he wouldn't have done this. I said, he was hiding this from Ellie. He had to hide it. I mean, and they made Church meaner than he was in the original, you know, when he came back. He is mean, but he's not like that. He was hissing all the
Right.
time. By the way, I will say the cats were wonderful. The cats are great. The cats are all
Absolutely.
great. They have that one that he leaves out there that has that look like.
Oh, that's great. When it
Oh, I was like, that cat looks awesome. The
look.
mean cat looked really good.
Yep.
But like when he left him out there, I said that is just not what Lewis would do. And and that's another case of being completely unfair to characters and not doing justice to who they are and what kind of people they are. You know, that change, it says so much about his character, as you said, that you can't build any sympathy for somebody who does something cruel and horrible. It's like, then, you know, and that was the moment I said, oh, they just don't care about these characters. They're just going to do whatever the hell they're going to do now. Because at that moment, I gave up hope for the rest of the movie.
Right.
I just
But
said, yeah.
they also got our ticket money.
They did. Yeah, they did. They did get it. They did get it. I got it on Prime this time, though, so they didn't get anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I'm not spending any more money on this movie. That's not happening. I was like, when I saw it was on Prime, I'm like, oh, thank God. I don't want to pay for this.
Right.
I was like, I don't want to pay to see this again. Yeah, that was, when he left him, that was just the worst. So, now let's talk about the moment when Ellie gets hit. The fact that, you know,
I've noticed that.
Yeah, they did try to do the fake out with Gage, having Gage run in. I have to say, I mean, as a positive note, as much as I can say a positive note, the fact that the truck jackknifed and then went down, that was kind of neat. I have to say, I was like, that's pretty cool, actually. Like when like the way it happens, and when he grabs Gage and pushes him, gets him out of the road, and then the way Ellie dies is like very when she's out on the side of the road and Rachel comes and she's got blood on her, and it was done pretty well, I have to say. I was
absolutely. The technical aspects, absolutely.
Yeah, it looked good, and it was sad, and it was, I liked that Church is what brought her in the road, because that's something that would have happened, because Church does lure people after he comes back, so I liked that. And it was a good revenge thing, like for what Lewis did to him, and yeah, so I have to say that I did like that. I don't know.
What are you gonna say? Go ahead, say it.
The phone.
Yes. Absolutely.
I didn't see that the first time when I saw it in the theater, and I was like, Sheena. I was like,
yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
See, that's something that how many people are going to know what that is? The real fans.
I did like that. I was like, oh, look at that. Oh, they have Sheena on there. How neat.
That's total fan service. When it comes to, I'm like, give me more of that. It's great.
Yeah, they knew what. There was a couple of those moments, and I actually wrote those down too. There's a couple times that they did definitely tip their hat to say, like, to try to say, well, we understand that we're making a remake of something, even though I didn't like what they did. I was like, I appreciated that, and I did appreciate that. I was like, oh, because I didn't notice that at all the first time, because it's such a flash. It happens like that, like he looks at the phone, and then the crash happens.
Yep.
Hits the brakes because he sees Gage in the road. So then another Lewis moment that's not good.
Yep.
Lewis drugging Judd.
Yes. Once again, can't feel sympathy. Yep.
No. And I said Lewis would never do that. Lewis would never do that. I have to say, this reminds me of one of these moments of when you really love a character and someone does something really unfair to them, and unfortunately this was the author, but I loved the Sounds of the Lambs series, like Thomas Harris, the series. And when I read Hannibal, which I don't know if you've ever read. You've read. It was before the movie came out. I read it when it came out. I was really excited. When I got to the end of that book, I threw it across the room.
Really?
I did. I had because I did not like what he did to Clarice at the end. I was very upset that they were like lovers. I was like,
that actually disturbed me.
Yeah.
That was never coming.
No. Yeah. But I didn't like it because I said Clarice would never be his lover, ever. I'm like, I just don't see that happening. And I thought it was unfair to her, but he wrote it. So I'm like, yeah.
Imagine if he got in her head enough to do that. I mean, I'm with you though. I'm so with you.
Yeah.
as far as like Clarice Starling being one of the greatest like protagonists of all time. But imagine if that's how, like, believe me, you don't want to get Hannibal Lecter inside your head. It's
I
a
know.
direct line, you know? So that's like the creepiest ending ever.
It was so awful. I was like, oh my God. And I understand you're absolutely right, but I just thought, like, it was, I just felt like it was a betrayal of her. Like, oh my God, she's so strong, and I hate the idea that he could do that to her, as
Right,
smart as he is. But of course, by that point, Harris had turned him into kind of a supervillain. He was kind of
right,
like, Lex Luthor at that point.
right. Good
Um,
call.
he could, yeah, he had, like, when he knew the guy was coming down the street and he like cuts his like artery before he like keeps moving. It's like, who can do that? Nobody can
Right.
do that. And I love that the way they changed the movie. But that's, to me, that's one of those moments of a character. I feel like, oh my God, it's so unfair to who that character is. Like, I thought, oh my God, not as bad as I felt about this one.
Right.
This one was worse. When he drugs him, that really upset me. I just was like, I was already upset by the cat, and then I said, when he drugged him, I went, he would never have done that, and it takes away from the power of the place, of how the
Yes.
place made Jed fall asleep, on his watch, and
Hmm.
that Judd knew what was going to happen, and was trying to wait up and see him, and then falls asleep. It's like, that means a lot, and
Of
that was
course.
taken away was really crappy. I
Hmm.
have to say. So the dumbwaiter again, when they had the moment in there's a moment in the mirror, which I don't think I talked about before, when she opens the mirror and
Yeah.
falls through the thing.
Jump scare. Yep.
So yeah, so my husband brought up something interesting, and I want to know what you think of it, because I went, ooh. He said, do you think that they were copying the Pennywise coming out of the refrigerator, and when she comes out like this and everything?
That's a distinct possibility.
Don't you think so? I said,
That's
when he said that,
yep.
I went, oh my God. Because that scene creeped him out when we saw it in the theater.
Oh,
He's like, oh, when
that's
he starts,
Kelly's favorite scene in the movie.
oh my God, when he starts unfolding himself. I
Uh,
loved that. And my husband was like, oh my God, watch it in the theater, but he said that to me when I mentioned, because he hasn't seen the remake of Pet Sematary, and I mentioned the dumbwaiter, and he said, she's like stuffed in a dumbwaiter. I went, yeah. And he goes, like Pennywise, like in it. I went, oh my God.
there
I
you
was
go.
like, that makes sense. Because I said they
Absolutely could be.
yeah,
Sure.
they pushed this remake out because of the success of it. Let's be
Of
honest. I
course.
mean, that's the only reason this got made, you
Of
know.
course.
Yeah. It wasn't
And
supposed,
all.
they had the remake rights forever, and nobody could get it made. Everybody was like, it was filtering through people, scripts were flying around, nobody, like, it was all these people thought about directing it, and nobody was doing it. And then I guess the time limit was up for the amount of time they had it, where
Mhm.
Paramount had it again, and Stephen King was going to take it back and be like, nope, you can't do it. And they had to make it, so that's why this got made.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, because of the success of it, and they were like, push another remake out.
At least he
So
should have had a cameo in it, because his cameo in the original is mint.
it's the
So
best.
good.
It's the best.
You know,
And now, he's just,
comfort him.
yeah,
It's so
oh,
love it.
he's wonderful. I love that he's a priest. That just it's so
Amazing.
perfect.
Amazing.
So then let's talk about Ellie. So when Ellie comes back, I don't know. I didn't find Ellie creepy. I find Ellie kind of just there. And,
Hmm.
it deflates what happens. It deflates. I don't think that she didn't come across as like sinister when she first, there's like, and I understand they were trying to do something like make her like look in, like maybe she is okay. And then, and I'm like, she's not though. And I'm like, and it felt like way too long, like when he got her in and then he gave her the bath and that whole thing. It just felt like
The staples in the head was a nice touch.
it was. Oh, it was. Yeah.
That was creepy.
Yeah, that was creepy. And like she's a creepy little girl. She did her work. As an
She
actor.
was an actress, I thought.
Yeah.
She was a
She,
good.
she
She was
did a
good.
nice, yeah, she did a nice job. But I said it took away the shock of what she is though, the way it was written, and that, you know, it just kind of made it like, oh, he's going to lay next to her in bed. And I think that it took away from the horribleness of the book and the original movie, that Lewis never saw what gauged it. Like he sees the carnage, he sees what's left, but he never watched anything. It was like he went to bed and then all that happened while he's sleeping.
Right.
And then he wakes up and he has to clean up. I love when he talks about in the book, like the rope with that's around the corner and in the dark, and you don't want to follow that rope and see what's in the
Right.
dark. I love that
Yeah.
because it's like that's true. He doesn't want to go cry because he realizes, oh my God, like what I did is I know. Like when he looked, he knew Rachel was home. He knew everything before he even
Well,
went over there.
in the new one, he when she like doesn't want him to leave when he puts her to bed, you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of see that instant regret in the
Oh
new one when she's like stay here, Dad, and automatically you can almost see that instant regret.
yeah,
And I like her little lazy eye.
yeah. She's real good at that. Like I don't know if
I
that
like
was done by CGI. Like her eye
yeah.
went this way. I don't know if she's got a lazy eye already. Maybe that was part of how she was cast. I don't know. I didn't see that in my research whether or not
I
she does
I
have a
thought it was
lazy eye.
interesting when she asks if she is dead.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was a cool little touch.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. I mean, like I said, the acting, as we've talked about, isn't terrible. There's like
Right.
little things that work, and like you're like, okay, I see what they're doing there. You know, this is kind of interesting. Um,
Mhm.
and I know why they did it. I mean, they even said this that they didn't they thought Gage couldn't be creepy. Now, here's the thing: is like in the '89 movie, Gage is just so damn cute, you
Like
know,
seriously.
and how you can't they can't make a 3-year-old say the things Gage says in the book. They
Nope.
can't do that. And I thought, you kind of could have in this one. You could have done it in a way where it was just coming out of his mouth. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like because he does open his mouth and things come out, and you could do that, and I thought, well, why didn't they like play with that idea? You know what I mean? And of course they changed it anyway because they said a little girl would be creepier. They're thinking of The Ring. They're thinking of
Of
all
course
these.
they are.
Yeah, and they know what they can work with that people's fears already about things and things. They were saying, well, a 2-year-old just isn't scary, and I'm like, well, he's pretty damn scary in the book. That's for
I was gonna say that they don't have no idea what they're talking about. I think
yeah,
the way in the book that King describes it, which is like the end of a chapter, he calls him the shadowy thing.
yeah. That's when
The
he comes to get the
shadowy,
scalpel. The
right?
shadowy thing left
Exactly.
the room.
Yep. The
Yeah.
shadowy thing left the room.
Yep.
Exactly. Love
Because
that.
yep, the hands like move through the bag, deliberate, like he says, like deliberately, and it's just, oh, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, I just love the book so much, obviously. It's just
Of
like,
course.
it's just written so well. And even in when he comes in the room in the '89 movie, he does the same thing. I love that shot where the door opens and there's his shadow, on the wall. And then, like, you just see his little hands in the bag and
Love it.
everything.
Yep.
And it's so good. It's done so well, and I mean,
And his
he is
little
scary.
he does like guttural like you hear like little tiny ones into his like baby voice.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it's great.
And they reverberated him like the echo. You can hear it when you listen. He just like his voice goes like that.
Yep.
Like they took and they used other like the little roar, like a little
Yes,
like that.
I love that.
Oh,
Love
it's so great. Like when Lewis actually puts the plunger in his neck, and like you
saddest
hear all
thing
those.
ever.
Oh
It's
my
so
God, it
sad.
is. But that's in the book too, because he
Right. Oh
says
yeah.
he says he sees his face, his real son's face, full of pain,
He has to
yelling
kill
his
his son. He has
yeah
to kill his son.
yeah
Like in his own
yeah
mind.
yep.
You know, and
Because
then
he
it does the
turns back
cutest
in.
reaction. No fair.
No fair,
No
best.
fair.
I
You know,
still love No Fair. I love that. I'm
it's
like, oh,
amazing.
it's so cute. It's so
It
sweet.
is.
And
Kelly
he's
and I
so
do that
evil.
all the time. Like when something happens, we're like, no fair.
No fair. It's
Yep.
perfect. It gave a
What
little, I
about the
think, laugh. And I think it gave
what
a
about
little
the
laugh at
exactly.
the end.
What about the Gage puppet in the original? I know we're going back to the original,
No, it's
but
okay. We can talk about it. We can compare. We're comparing and contrasting. That's what we're
the
doing.
Gage. Have you ever paused the Gage puppet and
Oh,
looked at
yeah.
it?
Oh, yeah.
Wicked creepy.
It's wicked creepy.
It's wicked
It's
creepy.
wicked creepy.
And like flies down at him, like
It was on a line in the
Yep.
documentary. If you remember, they show the line that it was on
Yep.
where it flew down because they did that because any scene that was scary, Miko, they didn't put Miko in. It was the
Right.
doll. Like whenever you see something really scary, it was the doll.
Right.
I loved the story about Judd when the neck when he had to bite Judd
Yes.
and like
Yes.
Lance Anderson tells a story about how they got him to bite and they said it's a
Yep.
game and
The
then
game.
just started acting and going and he screamed and freaked out because he thought he'd hurt him and ripped his
Right.
out.
Like, how can you make that scene possibly cute? That anecdote right there.
Exactly, yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, and I think that what they did for him in that movie, how they made him safe and they did it in such a way that they didn't traumatize him as a kid and
Of
I
course.
think the care that was put into it was very genuine and good. And
I
it
got to
made
meet him at Rocket Shock.
You met Miko?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to meet
Meet
Miko.
Miko. He was awesome. He
Oh,
signed on the picture. Now I want to play with you. He put
oh,
like
I
Y O
love
O
it.
O O. Yeah, it was awesome.
It was so
Wicked actor.
funny. Yeah, he's just oh, I love him so much, and it's so and all his other stuff too. And it was funny because we had watched Kindergarten Cop a few nights ago,
Yep.
and we were talking about, and I said, well, he had a big career because we were watching the documentary again, so I could go. And he said, did he? And I go, yeah. Remember he was in Kindergarten Cop? He goes, who was he in that? I said, boys have a penis, girls
Of
have a vagina. And he
course.
goes,
Yep.
that's him. And I went,
That's him.
I said, yes,
The
that's
line
him.
everyone knows. He said
Yep.
it.
I said, that's him. I said he was adorable. I said he was on Full House. I said he was on that for years. He did New Nightmare with
Or,
with Heather, and like I'm like he's great. I was like he's done a lot of work. I was like he was a very prolific child actor. He was great.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I understand why they went the way they went, but I think they could have tried harder and made Gage
100%.
really cool,
Totally agree.
but that was the way they went.
Like you said, they
Um,
could have done it now. They could have easily done it now with today's technology.
Absolutely. They could have made him way scary. He could have been terrifying. Terrifying.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, and the sad thing is in this movie, at least in the other movie, what happens to Gage, but they take care of Ellie because Ellie's the one who's like a prophet and like knows what's gonna happen. She's like a psychic. She knows what's gonna happen because
I
of
love
Pascal.
that.
Yeah,
Love
and like
that.
because Gage is a baby, he's just not a character. Like you don't. He's just there. You know what I
He's
mean? He's like
hardly in the new one.
he's
He's
hardly
a
in it.
non-entity.
Yeah, he
Non.
sees Pascal in the corner and he
Yep.
yells. Which
Yep.
did you notice that when he yells like Pascal, Pascal, he's yelling that? It was totally they did it like Red Rum. It was like
Right.
Pascal, Pascal. I
Right.
was like,
Right.
it's like Red Rum.
Yep.
It's like I was like noticing all these little things.
Well, what do you remember the other one at the birthday party?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Judd talks about Cujo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course.
I heard that. I didn't hear that when I saw it in the theater. I didn't hear him say that,
I
but
didn't remember it. I was like, oh my god.
yeah, yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool. I heard him. Yeah, I heard him mention that, and that's that was in the book too. Obviously, Judd told that story to him about the dog down the
Sure.
way that went crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, I know they did try. You can see they like tried to throw little things in there, and
Sure.
that I love stuff like that. I mean,
Oh,
obviously, I love
love
little
it.
little moments and
Most fan
yeah,
service, eat it right up.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, because you have to. Those are the people
Yep.
going to see it.
That's right.
You have to give them something.
That's
Um,
right.
okay, so when the couple things that bother the dancing when she dances around the living room, I was a little like I don't really
I think if she hadn't thrashed around and it had been a little more disjointed, it could have been creepy
yeah,
or
yeah,
creepier,
yeah, and
like the
just the
little
way
kid in Insidious.
yeah, okay,
Like,
yeah, that would have
like that
worked.
little.
Yeah, that would have worked to do it like that,
But when
absolutely.
it became overt with her thrashing stuff,
Yeah, and then she just looked like a bratty kid.
Right.
She was just like
Yeah.
at the end,
Right.
just staring at him, and I'm like, he's like, what are you telling her? And I'm like, okay, all right, calm down.
Yep.
I think because they set her up in that way that she looks like she's okay at first. That you're like, now you just look like a brat. You don't look like you're evil. You know what I mean? You just look like a bratty kid at that point.
Well, that was another thing in the book too, is that the animals, if I remember correctly, in the book, the animals come back not really mean,
No.
just different and have a different a void personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how they're different. They're not
Yeah.
mean. They're just not themselves.
No. And even church, I mean, like church follows Gage around,
Right.
and he eats and stuff like,
Right.
he's like eating the blood and things like that. But like
Mhm.
he does trip Judd, when
Mhm.
he goes after Judd. He's the reason
Right.
that Judd ends up
Yep.
falling down. I found that fascinating, actually. Let's bring up the '89 movie again.
There you
That they were talking about the Achilles tendon cut, which is not in the book. That
Yep.
Gage cuts the Achilles tendon on Judd, and the Lance Henderson was saying that he didn't understand. He said, "How is this tiny child going to knock giant Fred Gwynn over? Like, how is that going to happen?" And then they decided to do that. They kill it because he said if he does that, he can't move, he can't get up,
Right.
so he can jump on him. And it worked because he wasn't the same character as the book. He wasn't an evil demon because in the book he just Church trips him, he falls, and Gage is on him and kills him.
Right.
And it's
Yep.
like that worked because of the way that was set up.
Mhm.
It worked because of the way that movie was set up. But I don't think it would have worked any other way. All right, let's get back to it. Okay, so I liked something else I liked was I liked Norma's face on Ellie. I liked
Yep.
that that they did service to that.
That's very bookish.
Yes, and I
Yep.
liked that a lot. I remember at the end of the movie going, I like that. I'm all right with that. I liked it, and I liked that she talked to him. And there is a deleted scene. I don't know if you've seen it, where actually it's different and it's more like the book, where Ellie just opens her mouth and Norma's voice comes out.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, you'll have to watch it. It's pretty neat. I watched some extras after I watched the movie to see what the deleted scenes were like and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and to see if they did things that were more like the book. And there were things in there that were more like the book, honestly. And that was one of them, where she just like opened her mouth and the voice came out and she said the thing about, I slept with all your friends and we laughed at you. She says all that, like all the
Really?
stuff from the, yep. And it's creepier. It's really good. I was like, why didn't they do this? This was, I mean, her face morphing was kind of interesting, and that they have that technology to be able to do that is pretty cool. But it would have been so much better. And it was so weird the way she just like, she unhinges, you'll see it. She unhinges her mouth and like it just comes out. And
Dude, I want to check it out.
yeah, it was actually really good. I was like, this is great. And his reaction was awesome. And, and then it went right back into, when she jumps on him and kills him, but like it was done. I liked that better.
No, that's cool. I haven't checked that out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't buy the DVD or Blu-ray.
No, you can see them all on YouTube though. They're all on, all the extras are on YouTube. All right. So then I hate, I hate using the word hate, but I hate that Rachel comes home and with Lewis, and I just don't like any of that. I don't.
You talking about the last shot?
Yeah, well, like, no, actually, no, I'm talking about when she comes home and she's like there and they're talking about the fact that he brought her back. And
yes.
It's more like
yes.
it's more of the no secrets. It's just all on the table. Like everything's there. And poor Amy Semites, I feel so bad for her. She literally the entire movie was this. She just talked like this the entire movie, almost the whole thing. I was like, this poor woman. This is like where they've had her. They've had her at an 11 the entire movie. Like she didn't have any range. Like she probably did other stuff, but the way they edited her, she just like always was here, either almost crying. Everything was shaky and weird, and I'm like, this poor woman. And that scene is just when he's like, hug your daughter.
Right.
Oh God. I'm like, this is just, and then it just, when she's like, I don't want her here either. And you're just like, it just doesn't, I don't buy any of it. I was just like, I don't buy any of this and
they're just taking away the mystery. They're taking away the ambiguity, man.
Yeah.
Which is what makes the original so much creepier.
Yeah. I was intrigued by the fact that they made Rachel Zelda. I thought like she was in her body. I thought that was kind of neat because that was her biggest fear, was being in bed and being her sister.
And the effects were good.
Yeah, the effects were neat. The body was really cool. Yep. Of course she came out of the dumbwaiter and, I was like, whatever, she's unfolding herself from the dumbwaiter. But then she didn't even come out. And they didn't even put that great scene from the trailer in of her climbing. Her crawling down the hallway would have given me nightmares for weeks. Just seeing somebody, and they never did that. They never did it. I was like, that's sad. Let's see. So then let's go to the end. And of course she stabs her in the side and drags her up to the Pet Sematary, which is
insane.
Insane. It's just so bad. I was like, watching her drag her, I'm like, this takes away everything. This is not Lewis's madness. This is not, this is just, and then when, he comes up and, and she like, how fast did she bury her, by the way? Like Lewis like woke up and then she's already buried.
Yep.
So this kid buried her. All right, I know she's like a demon or whatever, but like she buried her and then fights with her father, and then all of a sudden Rachel's back.
Yep.
Like, and stabs him through the middle. And I just sat there and I just went, and then they drag him. And I'm like, and then the minute I saw the three of them, I saw the house on fire. I'm like, well, when did the house go on fire? I said out loud, I went, when did the house go on fire? What happened? When did Lewis do that? When did he set the house on fire? And I'm like, did we not just see it? Like when he went over to see Judd, did we not see him do it? And they just did it. And then he walks back with the gas can. I'm like, oh, so zombie Lewis burned the house down. Got it.
Which makes no sense, right?
No sense. And then the three of them walking up and the cat jumping on the thing. And I'm like, and I understand they're like, oh, what's going to happen to Gage? And I'm like, I don't really care what happens to Gage at this point.
Gage is a non-entity.
Yeah.
A non-entity.
I'm like, it's like they're just they're a zombie family. It's like the
what they're gonna be.
I'm like,
There's no like mystery, like you said, of Rachel maybe going to find Ellie in the original.
Mm-hmm.
They just cuts, and Rachel's wandering by herself in this weird, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And now it's just zombie family walking around.
Did you notice that the ending is the opening credits of the new one?
Yes. Yeah. That they did
That
the
I
house on
forgot
fire.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. I remembered that from the movie. Actually, I remember watching the movie, went in the theater and going, oh, there's the house on fire. So I was like, okay, I get it. So I'm like, they're showing
Mhm.
the end at the beginning and then the footstep. I actually kind of liked that. I liked the footsteps leading up and then they
Yes.
brought them coming in. I was like, oh, that's
Yep.
kind of neat, like foreshadowing what was going to happen. So have you seen the alternate ending to the movie since you haven't?
I probably have, but refresh my memory.
So the alternate ending is basically like they have the fight in the cemetery, but then Rachel dies and he ends up, I can't remember if he buried her or she buries her. I can't remember what happened, but Lewis doesn't die basically. And the very end of the movie is he's sitting with he goes and gets Gage out of the car and he's sitting with Gage on his lap in the house, and then you hear the door open and Rachel comes in and like it's like the feet, like one shoe
Mm-hmm.
off, one shoe on. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
in the other one. And then she comes over and puts her hand, she says, darling, and she puts her hand on his shoulder. And then it's like and Ellie comes in and stands next to them and puts her hand and goes, mommy, or something like this. And then it's like a portrait of the four of them, and they pull out of the window with just the four of them sitting together, which I kind of liked more. I was like,
That's you just sold me. Just your description is a
yeah,
way creepier ending.
it was so weird because Lewis looks completely like gone. And you're like, that's a better ending. That was a much better ending. And, I don't know if you ever heard what Stephen King's idea, because they told Stephen King what they're going to do. They said, we're going to kill Ellie. We're not going to kill Gage. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, okay. But he had an idea. He said, if you're going to do that, he goes, why don't you just leave Gage like he's like wandering down the road, like he gets out of the car and everyone else is gone. And then like somebody finds him and says, where's your family? Like basically like a neighbor finds him and picks him up and says, where's your family? And that's the end of the movie. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of an interesting ending too, to
Mm-hmm.
have him just wander off like that instead of that ambiguous, like what's going to happen to him with the family, which we all know what's going to happen to him.
Right.
And I liked that idea, but they just trashed it.
Oh, that's a way better ending.
Which
I like
proves,
that.
yeah, which kind of proves like more of they had their own agenda for what they did.
Especially if Lewis is like kind of gone / okay with it. That's what makes the ending in the original so creepy.
Yeah, yeah. I
Like
mean,
she comes back home and he's like looking at her like adoration, and
yep, I
it's
know.
amazing.
It's a great ending. It's a really good ending,
Amazing.
And yeah, I mean, there were like I saw their alternate scenes, and I'm like, this was better than what you did. this
Right.
is this was better than what you had. Um, yeah, it's pretty awful. Um, but that's and then of course we talked about the horrible cover of the Ramones, which
Oh,
that terrible cover with they're called
sacrilege.
Starcrawler is the name of that band, by the way, if you wanted to know that.
Like
Playing
I
the
wouldn't have even been mad if they'd used the Ramones again. I would have been like, oh, like even for a
yeah.
movie, that song belongs with that movie.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, I mean,
You know,
it is the song for that movie, and I think for them to cover it like that, I was like, you were right though. It's like that was the good cover to put with that
that's that
movie.
version's movie. Exactly.
Everything's off. Yeah, and
Yep.
that's another thing. Okay, so we talked about the trailers, and then I did want to talk about the postmortem that I talked about, the Mick Garris thing, and that when they talked to them about the movie, when Mick Garris talked to Dennis and Kevin about their changes and what they did and everything like that. Their assumptions for what they did, they're big fans. They were saying they were big fans, but it was written like they didn't change much of what was written, but they also had to bounce things off of themselves. And I think they had the specter of the other movie over them, and I feel bad for that in a way, but also I'm like, that's kind of really for you to think that you can make it your own in a way that you're changing everything about the characters and thinking I'm doing a reimagining of this. It's like, okay, but do a reimagining in a way that's right.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
Like a lot of parts of the It remake did.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
Exactly. And this is just rehashing what we've said, like basically just taking care of characters, taking care of who they
Yeah.
are, taking care of, you know, you can change things and make things different, but it's still, you have to be true to who they are, you know. And I don't know if you've seen Starry Eyes. They did Starry Eyes, their movie. Kevin,
Yeah, I haven't
yeah,
seen it. No, I'm familiar with it.
it's very good. I liked it. I was actually looking forward to that it was them, because I was like, you know, that's pretty cool that you know, like I liked the movie, and I'm like, oh, I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do with this, but of course I didn't care for it that much. All right. So just a couple more things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the documentary, and the fact that King, we were talking about Stephen King was a teacher, and I loved the idea that he taught Dracula, Jekyll and Hyde, and Frankenstein. And he considers those the three tops in horror literature, which I do too. And he, you know, they had a direct effect on Pet Sematary, because they're all about destruction of family. They're all about a monstrous presence, you know, and taking over normative behavior.
True.
And they're all about male secrets
Yep.
toward women, you
True.
know. And I like that. And I was like, that's very interesting. So yeah, that was what he taught in his syllabus in his class. And of course the monkey's paw. So you mentioned the monkey's paw earlier. And I love the monkey's paw. I'm starting my senior year at URI for my theater degree. And
Nice.
it's so funny because we were supposed to do a piece, because I'm a directing major, and we couldn't do it because of COVID, you know. And so we keep, like, everything's changed. So now we're doing radio plays. We're doing,
Nice.
because we can do those online, you know.
Sure.
And one of the ones I put in was the monkey's paw.
Nice.
And because I love,
I teach it every year.
oh, it's so good. It's
It's
so good.
amazing. It's like literally the primer for Pet Sematary.
It really is. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a reimagining. Yeah, it's just a reimagining of the story. It's so good. It's so good. I mean, I loved it forever, and I listened. What intrigued me to direct it for class was that I heard the Christopher Lee version on the BBC,
awesome.
which
Yep.
is fabulous, you know.
Yep.
And I love that idea of having somebody tell the story with, like, a book, and, like, you know,
Oh,
telling
I
the
love
story
all that too.
differently. Yeah.
Crackling fireplace in the
Uh-huh.
background.
Yeah. I love that idea, because
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, it's just such a fabulous story. Um, and the other thing I had mentioned to, I wanted to come back to, you had mentioned before, was going back to the original movie, was Dale and Fred having a special bond. And Dale Midkiff talks about that in the documentary, about how they had such a, and it's, you see it throughout the film. You see how much they liked each other and how much they cared about one another, and that, you know, it comes across, and it's.
You believe they know each other.
Yeah.
They look
Yeah.
like neighbors. I don't know what you know, it's the
I know.
combination of acting and directing, but
I
100%.
know. If you get a chance, by the way, to talk, because you know you've seen and you have unearthed and untold, John Campapiano, which I think I'm pronouncing, who directed that. You know that he's making Pennywise, right? He's
Oh,
making
yes.
the '90s making of it. Have you seen, like, the pictures?
Oh,
I'm so excited to see
absolutely.
that. I
Me
can't
too.
wait. You know, it was funny. I met him at Comic-Con when he was there, and he had the Pennywise's costume on a dummy, and I said, "Oh, how neat!" And I was like, "This is so cool." And I didn't realize he'd made Unearthed and Untold, and I'd seen that, and I was like, "Oh my God, you made this!" I said, "Oh, that's where I know you from." And he laughed. He's like, "Yeah, yeah." You know, he was so nice, and I'm excited for that one too, because I think he
Oh,
does
can't wait.
Have you seen the You're So Cool, Brewster? The Fright Night.
I haven't seen it yet, but I want to see it.
It's so
because
good.
I'm a huge Fright Night fan. Huge.
Me too.
Love it.
Of course, you know. Yeah, I love Fright Night. Fright Night's one of my favorite movies.
Oh,
And
me too. I got a signed poster.
oh yeah, I know. I had Chris Sarandon sign one
Yep.
for me too. So,
I
and
had Amanda Bierce and William Ragsdale and Stephen Jeffries
oh, that's so
and Chris
cool.
Sarandon on the same poster. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
And
awesome.
Chris Sarandon is actually a fan of the soundtrack, which I'm a huge fan of that soundtrack. I think it's
Soundtrack's
one of the
awesome. Yeah,
kick-ass horror soundtracks
it's
ever.
it's such a good movie. My last podcast I did actually was with my friend Danny, and it was about vampires. And we were talking about, I said, you know, I mentioned Fright Night at the very end, because we were doing, like, old school, we were doing, like, you know, Bella, and we were doing Christopher
Sure.
Lee and all that. But I brought up that because she's a huge fan of Dark Shadows. And we talked about Barnabas, and, like, how Barnabas was the first, like, that was the first time there was ever a love story with the vampire. It was always like, before that, it was always just, he's this guy in a castle and he's doing what he's doing.
Yep.
But that was the first time, and we talked about, like, so, you know, we owe Fright Night, because that's, like, the main thing when he sees her, and, like, it's like that's the same story, you know.
Yep.
And I mean, it's definitely, like, Tom Holland's, like, love letter, to
Oh,
everybody. I love Tom Holland.
absolutely.
I think he's brilliant.
Amazing.
I love the first Child's Play. I love his stuff. He's
Love it all.
fantastic.
Yep.
This has been wonderful. Have you had a good
I've
time?
I've had so much fun doing this. It's bringing back all my childhood memories. I hope to sometime do it again because it was truly a pleasure and a blast. It really, really
Oh,
was.
so cool. I
Yeah,
love your Pennywise behind you, by the way. I've been looking at him over your shoulder. Like, I want him to turn and look at me, Like that's... Oh, he's beautiful. Oh my God. That is a creepy mask. Oh my God. Look at
they have
him.
it.
Ugh. Oh, he's so scary looking. Eee, I love
Sometimes
it.
you do forget that he's here, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
the first thing in the morning or last thing at night, and it can, if the lights are out, it can give you a jolt. Because
Yeah.
like where that is on the shelf is like the height he is in the book. It's like
Yes.
7 feet tall or whatever. So
He's
that's
in your
awesome,
room. Um,
right?
okay, so you hang around with me for just a second, but I want to say goodbye to everybody. Have a good night. And thank you again, Steve.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And stay spooky.